The envelope was pink. That should have been my first clue that something was about to change. I stood in my tiny Seattle apartment, staring at the oversized pink envelope that had been slipped under my door sometime during the night. My name was written across the front in elegant calligraphy, Diana Morrison, the kind of calligraphy you see on wedding invitations or sympathy cards. I knew which one this would be. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. At 52 years old, I had learned that fancy envelopes rarely brought good news. The last fancy envelope I had opened was the life insurance payout after Richard died. 6 months ago. It felt like yesterday. It felt like a lifetime. I turned the envelope over. Heavy cardstock. Expensive. The kind of paper that said someone had money and wanted you to know it. I slid my finger under the seal and pulled out a single sheet. Notice of eviction. 30 days. The words blurred together as my eyes filled with tears. I had known this was coming. My landlord had warned me 2 months ago that he was raising the rent from $1,200 to $1,800. $1,800 a month for a studio apartment with a leaking faucet and a view of a brick wall. In Seattle, this was considered a bargain. I sank down onto my secondhand couch and let the paper fall from my hands. It drifted to the floor like a leaf, settling next to the stack of unopened bills I had been avoiding for weeks. The electric bill, the credit card bill, the hospital bill from Richard's final week. That one alone was $37,000. Our insurance had covered most of it, but most is not all. 30 days. Where was I supposed to go in 30 days? My daughter Ashley's voice echoed in my head from our last phone conversation. Mom, you need to be practical, look for something cheaper, move to a smaller town, get a roommate. Ashley meant well. She always meant well. But she was 28 years old with a successful career in Boston and a new husband named Brad who worked in finance. She had no idea what it was like to be 52, widowed, and invisible. Because that is what I had become in the 6 months since Richard died. Invisible. I caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. A woman with graying hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. Wearing Richard's old sweatshirt because it still smelled like him, even though I had worn it so many times that the smell was probably just my imagination now. Dark circles under my eyes from not sleeping, 40 pounds heavier than my wedding day, earned through 3 decades of putting everyone else first. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, probably Ashley calling to check on me. She did that now, ever since she found me crying in the bathtub 2 months ago during one of her surprise visits. But when I picked up the phone, I saw an unknown number with a Portland area code. I almost did not answer. Debt collectors had been calling about Richard's medical bills, but something made me swipe to accept the call. Hello, this is Diana. Mrs. Morrison, a woman's voice, professional but warm. My name is Martha Chen. I am an attorney with Morrison and Associates in Portland. I am calling regarding your grandmother Eleanor Morrison's estate. My heart stopped. Grandmother Eleanor. I had not thought about her in years, had not seen her since I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I remembered a tall woman with steel gray hair and paint-stained fingers. She had lived in some big old house outside Portland. My mother never talked about her much, said Eleanor was difficult, said she had chosen to isolate herself. Mrs. Morrison, are you still there? Yes, I said. I am here. I am sorry. I did not know my grandmother had passed away. It happened 6 weeks ago. She was 93. Martha Chen's voice softened. She had been in memory care for the past 12 years. The dementia was quite advanced toward the end. I'm very sorry for your loss. I did not know what to say. How do you mourn someone you barely knew? Someone your own family had cut ties with decades ago? Mrs. Morrison, Martha continued, your grandmother left you her entire estate in her will. Rosewood Manor and the surrounding property. It is about 20 acres in the Thornton Heights neighborhood of Portland. We have been managing the property through a trust. But now that Eleanor has passed, everything transfers to you. I'm sorry, what? You have inherited your grandmother's house, Mrs. Morrison. It is a Victorian mansion built in 1895. Quite historic. The property is currently valued at approximately $2 million. The room started spinning. $2 million, $2 million. I looked around my tiny apartment with its peeling paint and broken blinds, at the eviction notice lying on the floor, at the stack of bills I could not pay. Mrs. Morrison, are you all right? I think I need to sit down. Take your time. I know this is quite a lot to process. I was already sitting, but I leaned forward and put my head between my knees the way they teach you to do when you think you might faint. $2 million. That kind of money did not exist in my world. Richard and I had been comfortable, but never wealthy. He had been a middle manager at an insurance company. I had been a stay-at-home mom. We lived paycheck to paycheck with a little bit left over for Ashley's college fund. When can I see it? I asked. The property? Well, there are some papers you will need to sign first. I can email them to you, or if you would like to come to Portland, we could handle everything in person. I should mention that there is one more thing. Of course, there was one more thing. Nothing in life was ever simple. Your grandmother left you a letter. She wrote it about 5 years ago, before the dementia became too severe. She instructed me to give it to you only after she passed. Would you like me to read it to you, or would you prefer I mail it? Mail it, please, I said. I want to read it myself. I will send it today with the estate documents. Mrs. Morrison, I realize this is overwhelming, but I should also mention that there are some complications with the property. What kind of complications? The neighborhood around Rosewood Manor has changed quite a bit since your grandmother purchased the house. About 15 years ago, a luxury development called Thornton Heights was built around the property. They formed a homeowners association. There have been some conflicts. What kind of conflicts? Martha Chen hesitated. Let's just say the HOA has been very interested in acquiring your grandmother's property. They have made multiple offers over the years. Your grandmother refused to sell. Why would they want to buy it? I think that is something you should see for yourself, Mrs. Morrison. The property is quite beautiful, but it does not exactly fit with the modern aesthetic of the surrounding neighborhood. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The eviction notice lay on the floor, mocking me. 30 days to get out. But maybe I did not need 30 days anymore. Maybe I had somewhere to go. I picked up my phone and called Ashley. She answered on the second ring. Mom, I was just thinking about you. How are you feeling? Ashley, I said. Something happened. Something big. 3 days later, the documents arrived. Thick manila envelope, overnight delivery, signature required. I signed for it with hands that would not stop trembling and carried it inside like it was made of glass. I spread everything out on my coffee table. Property deeds, tax records, photographs of Rosewood Manor taken from various angles. The house was stunning. 3 stories of weathered wood and stone, with a wraparound porch and towers that looked like something from a fairy tale. Wild gardens surrounded it, overgrown but beautiful in their chaos. And there, at the bottom of the stack, was a smaller envelope with my name written in shaky handwriting. I opened it carefully. My dearest Diana, it began. If you're reading this, I am gone. Good. I was tired of that damn nursing home. I smiled despite myself. Even through dementia and death, my grandmother's personality came through. I am leaving you Rosewood Manor because I see myself in you. A woman who made herself small to make others comfortable. I did that for 40 years. Then your grandfather died, and I realized I had disappeared. I had become a shadow in my own life. Do not disappear, Diana. This house is your second chance. There is a woman named Patricia Blackwood who wants to tear it down. She is the president of the Thornton Heights Homeowners Association. She has been trying to force me out for years. Do not let her. Do not let her make you small. Do not let her take what is yours. Some battles choose us, my darling girl. We do not get to pick them. They find us when we are ready, or sometimes when we are not ready at all. This battle chose you. Now you must choose whether to fight. I fought once when I was younger. I bought this house with money I earned from my paintings. Your grandfather thought it was foolish. My parents thought it was unladylike. But I did it anyway. It was the bravest thing I ever did. Then I spent 40 years being a good wife, a good mother, a good neighbor. I made myself small again. After your grandfather died, I tried to reclaim myself. I started painting again. I fought the HOA. But I was too old, too tired, too alone. You are not too old. You are 52. You have half your life ahead of you. You are not too tired, even though grief makes you feel that way. And you are not alone, even though you feel invisible. Fight, my darling girl, finally fight. With all my love, Grandma Eleanor. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and held it against my chest. A woman I barely remembered had seen something in me that I could not see in myself, had believed I was capable of something I did not feel capable of at all. I looked around my tiny apartment, at Richard's sweatshirt draped over the chair, at the wedding photo on the shelf, both of us so young and hopeful, at the eviction notice on the floor. 2 weeks later, I was loading my life into the back of my 10-year-old Honda Civic. It all fit. 30 years of marriage, 28 years of motherhood, 52 years of existence, and it all fit into the trunk of a sedan with room to spare. Ashley had not understood my decision. "Mom," she had said over video chat, "you do not even know Portland. You have never lived alone. What if you hate it? What if the house is falling apart? What if this HOA thing is really serious? What if I stay here and disappear completely?" I had replied. She had not known what to say to that. Now I was driving south on Interstate 5, leaving Seattle behind. The rain followed me for the first 2 hours. Typical Pacific Northwest weather, gray and heavy. But as I crossed into Oregon, the clouds began to break. Sunlight streamed through in golden shafts that made the wet pavement shimmer. I had the radio off. I wanted silence. Wanted to hear my own thoughts for once, instead of filling every quiet moment with noise to avoid feeling the emptiness where Richard used to be. Portland appeared gradually. First the suburbs, then the city proper with its bridges and rivers. I followed the GPS directions toward Thornton Heights, watching the neighborhoods change as I drove. Urban density gave way to wider streets, then to gates and long driveways. The houses got bigger, the lawns got greener, the cars got more expensive. "Turn right onto Riverside Parkway," the GPS announced. I turned onto a street that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Massive modern homes lined both sides, each one trying to outdesign the next. Clean lines, lots of glass, perfectly manicured lawns that looked like they had been trimmed with scissors. Not a weed in sight, not a blade of grass out of place. Women in athletic wear walk small dogs. Men wash luxury cars in driveways. Everything was perfect, perfectly clean, perfectly maintained, perfectly soulless. "Your destination is ahead on the left," and then I saw it. Rosewood Manor rose up like a memory in the middle of all that modern perfection. 3 stories of Victorian architecture, weathered but dignified. The wood siding had faded to a soft gray. The stone foundation was covered in moss. The wraparound porch sagged slightly on one side. And the garden, oh, the garden was completely wild. Roses climbing the fence, wildflowers overtaking what had once been careful beds, tall grass swaying in the breeze. It was the most beautiful thing I had seen in 6 months. I pulled into the driveway, my tires crunching on gravel that was half buried in fallen leaves. The moment I turned off the engine, silence settled over me like a blanket. Not the empty silence of my Seattle apartment. This was different. This silence was full of birdsong and rustling leaves and the distant sound of wind chimes. I got out of the car slowly, my legs stiff from the 5-hour drive. The afternoon sun was warm on my face. I walked toward the front door, my feet following a stone path that was cracked and uneven but still solid. The key Martha Chen had mailed me fit perfectly in the old lock. I turned it and heard a click that seemed to echo through the years. This lock had been here since 1895. How many people had turned this key? How many lives had passed through this door? I pushed it open. The inside took my breath away. Hardwood floors that creaked but gleamed. A sweeping staircase with a carved banister. Stained glass windows that painted colored light across the walls. Dust motes danced in the air, caught in the sunlight streaming through tall windows. Everything was frozen in time. My grandmother's furniture was still here, her paintings on the walls, her books on the shelves. It was like walking into a moment that had been preserved for 12 years, waiting for someone to come back and live in it again. I walked through the room slowly, touching things. The piano in the parlor, the long dining table, the kitchen with its vintage stove and deep farmhouse sink. Up the stairs to the bedrooms, 4 of them, each one larger than my entire Seattle apartment. And at the end of the hall I found it, Eleanor's art studio. The room was flooded with north light from enormous windows. Canvases were stacked against the walls. Paints and brushes were laid out on a long table, waiting for hands that would never return. And on an easel in the center of the room was an unfinished painting. It was a self-portrait. My grandmother at maybe 70, her face lined but her eyes still fierce. She had painted herself at this very easel painting. A woman painting herself painting. Infinite loop. Infinite possibilities. I sat down on the stool in front of the easel and started to cry. Not the quiet, contained tears I had cried at Richard's funeral. Not the dignified grief I had shown Ashley and the neighbors and Richard's coworkers. These were loud, ugly, shoulder-shaking sobs. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep inside, from a place you did not know existed until it breaks open. I cried for Richard, for the life we had built together and the future we would not have. I cried for my daughter, who loved me but did not understand me. I cried for the 30 years I had spent making myself smaller and quieter and more convenient. I cried for my grandmother, who I had never really known, who had seen herself in me across the decades. And I cried for myself, for the woman I used to be, before marriage and motherhood and widowhood, for the girl who had wanted to be an art teacher but had given it up when Richard said we could not afford for both of us to work low-paying jobs, for all the versions of myself I had left behind. When the tears finally stopped, I felt emptied out, hollow but clean, like a space that had been cleared to make room for something new. I stood up and walked to the windows. From here, I could see the neighborhood stretching out around the property, all those perfect houses with their perfect lawns, and in the middle of it all, this wild, beautiful, imperfect old house. My house. A movement caught my eye. A woman was walking across my lawn. Not walking, marching. She wore white slacks and a crisp blue blouse. Her silver hair was perfectly styled. She carried a clipboard. I watched her approach the front door. A moment later, the doorbell rang. I went downstairs and opened the door. The woman's smile did not reach her eyes. "You must be Eleanor's granddaughter." "I am Patricia Blackwood, president of the Thornton Heights Homeowners Association. Welcome to the neighborhood." She said welcome like it was a threat. "Thank you," I said. "I am Diana Morrison." "Yes, I know." She glanced past me into the house, her nose wrinkling slightly. "I wanted to speak with you about the property. There are some compliance issues we need to address right away." "Compliance issues?" She held out the clipboard. I had prepared a list. The exterior paint is not up to neighborhood standards. The lawn exceeds the maximum allowed height by at least 8 inches. The fence is in disrepair. The front garden contains numerous unapproved plant species. And the overall aesthetic of the property is not in keeping with the Thornton Heights design guidelines. I stared at the clipboard. It was 53 pages long. "This is a very old house," I said. "It has been here since 1895. "Yes," Patricia said. "And Thornton Heights has been here since 2009. When you join a neighborhood with an HOA, you agree to maintain certain standards. I'm sure you understand." Something in her tone made my jaw tighten. The way she said, "I am sure you understand," like I was a child who needed to be educated. "I do not remember agreeing to anything," I said. "Your grandmother's property is technically within the Thornton Heights boundaries," Patricia explained, speaking slowly, as if to someone hard of understanding. "That makes you subject to our rules and regulations. I have sent numerous letters over the years requesting that these violations be addressed. Now that you are the owner, I expect you to comply. And if I do not?" Her smile went sharp. "Then we will be forced to take legal action." "Nobody wants that, Mrs. Morrison. I am simply asking you to be a good neighbor. Make the property presentable. Or, if that is too much work, perhaps you might consider selling. I know several developers who would be very interested." There it was, the real reason for this visit. "I will think about it," I said. "Excellent." Patricia handed me the clipboard. "I will need your decision within 30 days. HOA fees are $750 per month, due on the 1st. Welcome to Thornton Heights." She walked away before I could respond, her heels clicking on the stone path. I closed the door and looked down at the clipboard. 53 pages of violations. $750 a month, 30 days to comply or sell. My grandmother's words echoed in my head. "There is a woman named Patricia Blackwood who wants to tear it down. Do not let her." I walked back upstairs to the art studio and sat down at the easel again. The unfinished self-portrait stared back at me. My grandmother, frozen in time, painting herself into existence. "Fight," her letter had said. "Finally fight." But I had never been a fighter. I was the woman who said yes when I wanted to say no. The woman who apologized when someone else was rude. The woman who made herself small to make everyone else comfortable. A soft knock at the front door interrupted my thoughts. I went downstairs, expecting Patricia again. But when I opened the door, I found a completely different woman. She was older than Patricia, maybe late 60s, with wild gray hair pulled back in a messy bun. She wore paint-stained overalls and no shoes. Her face was weathered and kind, with laugh lines around bright blue eyes. "You must be Diana," she said. Her voice had the lilt of an Irish accent. "I am Maggie O'Brien. I lived next door to your grandmother for 20 years. Saw you arrive earlier. Wanted to wait until the vulture left before I came over." "The vulture?" "Patricia Blackwood." She laughed. "Don't mind her, love. She has got a stick up her arse the size of a sequoia tree." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "Can I come in?" Maggie asked. "I brought scones. Your grandmother loved my scones." I stepped aside and she walked in like she had done it 1,000 times before. Probably had. She went straight to the kitchen and started making tea without asking, pulling mugs from cabinets and finding the kettle like it was her own home. "Eleanor and I had tea here every Sunday for 15 years, Maggie said, filling the kettle, "until the dementia got too bad, and they moved her to that bloody nursing home. I visited her there every week. She did not remember me most days, but sometimes she would say your name. Diana. She would say, 'Is Diana coming? Is she here yet?'" Did she talk about me?" "All the time, love. She felt terrible about losing touch with your family. Your mother and her, they had a falling out when you were just a wee thing. Something about Eleanor choosing to live independently after your grandfather died. Your mother thought she should move closer to family. Eleanor refused. Pride on both sides, I think." The kettle began to whistle. Maggie poured water over tea bags and brought the mugs to the table. "She loved you, though," Maggie continued. "Kept every photo your mother sent in the early years. Drew pictures of what she imagined you looked like as you grew up. When she heard you had gotten married, she cried. Happy tears. Said she hoped you would be happier than she was." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. Why was not she happy? Because she made herself small, love. Married a man who wanted a pretty thing on his arm, not a partner. Gave up her painting for decades. By the time he died and she bought this house and started painting again, she was already in her 50s. She said she had wasted half her life being what someone else wanted. "Just like me," I whispered. Maggie reached across the table and took my hand. "Eleanor knew you would understand. That is why she left you the house. She said you were just like her. Said you needed a second chance to find yourself, the way this house gave her a second chance." We sat in comfortable silence, drinking tea. Through the window, I could see Patricia's house. Modern. Perfect. Everything in its place. "I should warn you," Maggie said. "Patricia is not going to make this easy. She has been trying to get this property for 10 years. Wants to tear down the house and build more of those soulless boxes. She has forced out 3 other families who did not fit her vision of what Thornton Heights should be." "What happened to them?" "Harassment, mostly. Violation notices. Fines. Legal threats. One family had a son who worked on cars in the garage. Patricia called it a commercial enterprise. Got them fined thousands of dollars. They sold just to escape. Another family was going through a divorce. Patricia spread rumors, made them feel unwelcome. They left too." "And the third family?" Maggie's face darkened. "Widow. Nice woman named Grace Hartford. Lost her husband suddenly. Patricia went after her within weeks. Said the property was not being maintained to standards because Grace was grieving and could not keep up with the yard work. Fined her. Threatened her. Grace sold the big house and bought something smaller just to stay near her grandchildren. But it broke her." I felt sick. This woman, this Patricia Blackwood, systematically destroyed people who did not fit her vision. "Why does she do it?" I asked. Maggie shrugged. Eleanor thought it was because of what happened to Patricia herself. Her first husband left her when she was 48. Nasty divorce, lost everything. Had to rebuild from nothing. Married George Ashford a few years later for his money, from what people say. Built this whole HOA into her personal kingdom. Maybe she thinks if she controls everything, nothing can hurt her again. We finished our tea, and Maggie showed me around the garden, pointing out which plants were Eleanor's favorites. The roses climbing the fence, the lavender that came back every spring, the old oak tree that had been there longer than the house. As she was leaving, Maggie paused at the door. "Eleanor fought Patricia for years, you know. Right up until the dementia took her fight away. The last thing she said to me when she still had words was tell Diana to fight. Tell her she is stronger than I was. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. I failed, Eleanor. I watched her get pushed out. I was too afraid to help. But I won't fail you, Diana. Whatever you need, I am right next door. After she left, I stood on the porch and looked out at Thornton Heights. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Lights were coming on in the perfect houses. People were coming home from work, pulling into garages, closing automatic doors. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. Did you make it safely? How is the house? I typed back. It is beautiful. It is perfect. It is mine. A moment later, she responded. Mom, are you sure about this? You do not have to do this alone. You could sell and come to Boston. Brad and I have room. I looked at the text for a long time. Then I typed, I am not alone, and I am not selling. The next morning, I woke up in my grandmother's bed. The mattress was old but comfortable. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains. I could hear birds singing in the garden. I made coffee in the vintage kitchen and carried it out to the porch. The morning was cool and clear. Dew sparkled on the grass. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard a car door slam. I looked up to see a minivan parked in my driveway. Ashley climbed out, followed by a small figure with a pink backpack. Zoe, my 8-year-old granddaughter, came running up the path. Grandma Diana, this house is like a castle! I set down my coffee and knelt to catch her as she launched herself into my arms. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and airplane snacks. Ashley walked up more slowly, looking around with wide eyes. Mom, she said, this place is incredible. What are you doing here? I asked. Ashley bit her lip. I talked to Brad. He is being transferred to Singapore for 6 months. His company is opening a new office. It is a huge opportunity. That is wonderful, I said, though I was not sure why she was telling me this now. The thing is, Zoe needs stability. A school she knows, friends, not bouncing around Singapore while we figure things out. And Brad's parents are in Florida, which is too far, so I was wondering if Zoe could stay with me for the summer. Ashley nodded. I know it is a lot to ask. You just moved. You are dealing with the house and the HOA thing and everything. But she loves you. And I think maybe you could both use the company. I looked at Zoe, who was already running around the garden, examining flowers and chasing butterflies. Yes, I said. Of course she can stay. The relief on Ashley's face was immediate. Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. I will pay for everything she needs. Food, clothes, activities. Ashley, I interrupted. She is my granddaughter. Let me do this. We spent the morning unpacking Zoe's things and getting her settled in one of the spare bedrooms. She chose the one with the window seat that overlooked the garden. Ashley left after lunch, crying but trying not to show it, promising to video call every day. That afternoon, Zoe and I explored the house together. She was fascinated by everything. The old piano that still played, though out of tune. The dumbwaiter that had once carried dishes from the kitchen to the dining room. The attic full of Eleanor's paintings and old furniture and mysterious boxes. But what captured her attention most was the art studio. Grandma Diana, did great-grandma Eleanor paint all these? Yes, she did. Zoe walked around the room, studying each canvas with the serious concentration only children possess. They are beautiful. Why did she stop? She did not stop. She died. Zoe thought about this. That is sad. But at least she got to paint them first. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. That evening, Zoe found a box of old flower seeds in the garden shed. She brought them to me with eyes shining. Can we plant them, Grandma? I looked at the packets. They were ancient, probably from my grandmother's time. The paper was yellowed and the ink faded, but the seeds inside might still be viable. Sure, sweetheart. Where do you want to plant them? She pointed to a bare patch in the front garden, right next to the path where everyone could see. There, so everyone who visits can see how pretty they are. We spent the rest of the afternoon planting. Zoe dug the holes with a small trowel while I showed her how to space the seeds properly. She was so focused, her tongue sticking out slightly as she concentrated. As we worked, I noticed Patricia Blackwood walking past on the sidewalk. She stopped and stared at us. Her face was unreadable, but something in her posture was tense. I waved. She did not wave back. She just stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked away. That night, after I tucked Zoe into bed, I sat in the art studio and opened Eleanor's journal. Maggie had given it to me that morning, saying Eleanor would want me to have it. The entries were sporadic, written over many years. Some were mundane, what she painted, what she planted, the weather, but others were more revealing. June 15th, 2013. Patricia Blackwood came by again today, third time this month, wants to buy the property, said my house is an eyesore, said I am bringing down property values, told her where she could shove her property values. September 3rd, 2014. Got another violation notice from the HOA. Apparently, my roses are growing too tall and blocking the sidewalk. Never mind that the sidewalk is on my property, and those roses have been there since 1972. Patricia is relentless. March 27, 2015. Did some research on Patricia Blackwood today. Found out her husband Richard left her in 2008. Divorce was brutal. She lost their house in the foreclosure. Had to start over at 48. I understand that pain. But understanding someone's pain doesn't mean accepting their cruelty. May 10th, 2016. 3 families have left Thornton Heights this year, all forced out by Patricia's harassment. She targets women especially, widows, divorcees, women she sees as weak. Why does she hate us so much? Does she see herself in us? The woman she was before she armored herself in rules and power. The entries went on, year after year of battle. My grandmother fighting to keep her home, to keep her autonomy, to keep herself. The last entry was dated January 2nd, 2019. I am forgetting things now. The doctor says it is dementia. Early stages. I am so angry. Angry that I am losing my mind just when I finally found it again. Angry that Patricia will win by default, because I won't be able to fight anymore. But there is Diana, my granddaughter. I barely know her, but I see myself in the few photos I have. A woman who made herself small, a woman who gave up her dreams. If I leave her this house, maybe she will find what I found. A second chance, a place to stand her ground, a battle worth fighting. I am writing her a letter tomorrow, while I still can. Before the words slip away from me like water through my fingers, I will tell her to fight. I will tell her she is stronger than she knows. Some battles choose us. This one chose her. I closed the journal and sat in the quiet studio. Outside, the moon was rising over Thornton Heights. In houses all around me, people were living their perfect lives in their perfect homes, following Patricia Blackwood's perfect rules. But I was different. This house was different. We did not belong in her perfect vision. The question was, did I have the courage to fight for that difference? The next week passed in a blur. Zoe started at a local summer day camp. I worked on the house, cleaning decades of dust, organizing Eleanor's things, making the space feel lived in again. Maggie came by most afternoons with tea and stories about my grandmother. And every day I found a new violation notice taped to my front door. The grass was too long, the paint was peeling, the fence needed repair, the garden contained unapproved plants, the mailbox was not regulation height. 7 notices in 7 days. On the 8th day, Patricia came in person. I was in the garden, weeding the flower bed where Zoe had planted Eleanor's seeds. I heard footsteps on the gravel and looked up to see Patricia standing there with her clipboard and her sharp smile. Mrs. Morrison, we need to talk about these violations. I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. I have been meaning to call you. Good. Then you have had time to review the compliance requirements. I assume you will be addressing these issues promptly? Actually, I said, I have decided not to. Her smile froze. Excuse me? I am not going to repaint the house. I am not going to cut down the roses. I am not going to replace the fence or remove the wildflowers. This house was here 70 years before Thornton Heights existed. It does not need to change to fit your aesthetic. Patricia's face went cold. Mrs. Morrison, I do not think you understand the seriousness of this situation. The HOA has rules. You are in violation. There will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Fines, legal action. We can put a lien on your property if you do not comply. We can make your life very difficult. Something in her tone, something in the way she said we can make your life very difficult, made something snap inside me. I thought of my grandmother, fighting this woman for years. I thought of Grace Hartford, forced from her home while grieving. I thought of all the years I had spent making myself small. No, I said. It was just one word, 2 letters, but it felt like the most powerful thing I had ever said. No, no, I repeated. I am not going to let you bully me the way you bullied my grandmother. The way you bullied Grace Hartford and those other families. I am not leaving, I am not changing, and I am not afraid of you." Patricia's face went through several shades of red. "You have no idea what you are starting, Mrs. Morrison." "Maybe not, but I know what I am ending. Your reign of terror in this neighborhood." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "You are making a mistake. A very serious mistake. The only mistake would be selling this house to make you happy. My grandmother fought you for years. She told me not to let you win, and I am not going to." "We will see about that." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on stone. But something about her posture was different, less confident, more threatened. I stood there, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I had just said no to someone who was used to people saying yes. I had just picked a fight I had no idea how to win. "Grandma?" I turned to find Zoe standing on the porch, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She must have just gotten home from camp. "Was that lady being mean to you?" "Yes, sweetheart, she was." "Why?" "Because she does not like that our house is different from the others." Zoe looked at Rosewood Manor, then at the modern houses surrounding it. "I think our house is the prettiest one." "Me too, baby, me too." That night, after Zoe was asleep, I sat in the art studio and pulled out a notebook. If I was going to fight Patricia Blackwood, I needed to understand what I was up against. I started researching HOA bylaws, property law, homeowner rights. I read the 53-page violation list line by line. I read the Thornton Heights regulations, all 200 pages of them. And buried on page 147, I found something interesting. Any property owner within Thornton Heights boundaries may petition for an emergency election of HOA board positions. Petition requires signatures from 25% of neighborhood residents. I did the math. There were 80 houses in Thornton Heights. 25% would be 20 signatures. 20 people who were willing to stand up to Patricia Blackwood. It seemed impossible. Everyone was afraid of her. But maybe, just maybe, there were others like me. Others who were tired of being afraid. I was so absorbed in reading that I almost missed the sound. A soft scraping at the front door, then footsteps walking away quickly. I went downstairs and opened the door. There was nothing there except a single sheet of paper, folded in half. I picked it up and unfolded it. The note was written in hasty handwriting. "Patricia destroyed my life 3 years ago. I lost my house, my savings, everything. She has a pattern. She targets women like us, widows, women alone, women she thinks are weak. If you fight her, I will help you. But I cannot do it alone. I am too afraid. I know that makes me a coward. But maybe together we can be brave." It was unsigned except for 2 words at the bottom. A friend. I stood on the porch in the moonlight, holding this note from a stranger who understood. Somewhere in Thornton Heights, there was another woman who had been broken by Patricia Blackwood. Another woman who wanted to fight back but could not do it alone. Maybe I could not do it alone either. Maybe that was okay. Maybe fighting did not mean being strong all by yourself. Maybe it meant finding others who were willing to stand with you. I went back inside and added the note to my research pile. Tomorrow I would start looking for allies. Tomorrow I would begin building something Patricia Blackwood would not expect, a resistance. But tonight, I sat at Eleanor's easel and looked at her unfinished self-portrait, a woman painting herself into existence, a woman who had fought and lost but had still believed her granddaughter could win. "Fight," her letter had said, "finally fight." I was fighting. Maybe I did not know how yet. Maybe I did not have a plan. Maybe I was terrified. But I was fighting. And for now, that was enough. The morning after I found the anonymous note, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. For 6 months, I had looked at a ghost, a woman hollowed out by grief, existing but not living. But something had changed. My eyes had light in them again. Not happiness, not yet, but something fiercer, determination. I got dressed carefully, not in Richard's old sweatshirt, but in actual clothes, jeans that fit, a blue sweater that Ashley had bought me last Christmas, still with the tags on. I brushed my hair and even put on a little makeup. Not much, just enough to look like someone who had not given up. Zoe appeared in the doorway, already dressed for camp in shorts and a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it. "You look pretty, Grandma." "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you going somewhere?" I'm going to meet some neighbors. Her face lit up. Are you making friends? The innocence of the question nearly broke my heart. When had I stopped making friends? When had I stopped being someone who had friends at all? Richard and I had couple friends, work friends, Ashley's parent friends. But what friends did I have that were just mine? I hope so, I told her. After I dropped Zoe at camp, I sat in my car in the parking lot and pulled out the anonymous note again. Patricia destroyed my life 3 years ago. If you fight her, I will help you. But I cannot do it alone. 3 years ago. That would be around 2021. I needed to find out who had left Thornton Heights 3 years ago, who had been forced out, who had been broken but survived. I drove to the Thornton Heights Community Center and asked to see old HOA meeting minutes. They were public record, the bored teenager at the desk told me. He led me to a back room with filing cabinets and left me alone. I started going through files. Meeting after meeting of Patricia presiding, Patricia proposing, Patricia voting. The woman ran the HOA like a dictatorship. And there, in the minutes from August 2021, I found something interesting. Motion to approve sale of 247 Riverside Parkway. Owner Grace Hartford selling to Thornton Development LLC. Vote, unanimous approval. Grace Hartford, the widow Maggie had mentioned, the one Patricia had destroyed while she was grieving. I copied down the address and spent the next hour searching property records on my phone. Grace Hartford had sold 247 Riverside Parkway for $1.2 million. 3 months later, she had purchased 89 Willow Lane for $600,000. Same neighborhood, but a much smaller house. She was still here, still in Thornton Heights. I drove to 89 Willow Lane slowly, rehearsing what I would say. What do you say to a stranger whose life was destroyed by the same person threatening you? How do you ask someone to be brave when they have every reason to be afraid? The house was a small ranch style, neat but plain. Nothing like the mansion she had lost. I parked in the driveway and walked to the front door on legs that felt like water. I rang the bell. The woman who answered was in her early 60s, elegant even in casual clothes. She had the kind of bone structure that meant she had been beautiful her whole life, but there was something defeated in her posture. She looked at me with cautious eyes. Yes? My name is Diana Morrison. I inherited Eleanor Morrison's house. Rosewood Manor. I think you knew my grandmother. Recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by fear. She glanced past me, checking the street like she expected Patricia to be hiding in the bushes. I cannot talk to you, she said. I am sorry. And she started to close the door. Please, I said. I found your note. She froze. What note? The one you left at my door. About Patricia destroying your life. About helping me if I fight her. Her face went pale. I do not know what you are talking about. Grace, I said softly. That is your name, right? Grace Hartford? She swayed slightly, gripping the doorframe. How did you find me? Public records HOA meeting minutes. It was not hard. You need to leave. If Patricia finds out you are here, she will make it worse for both of us. Worse how? She already threatened to put a lien on my house. She is already sending violation notices every day. What else can she do? Grace's eyes filled with tears. You have no idea what she is capable of. Then tell me. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. Come in. Quickly. The inside of her house was beautiful, but small. Expensive furniture crammed into spaces meant for much less. Photos on every surface. An older man in many of them, smiling, vital, alive. Grace followed my gaze. That is Tom, my husband. He died 4 years ago. Heart attack. He was only 62. I'm so sorry. She sat down on the couch and I sat across from her in an armchair. We stayed in silence for a moment. Two widows who understood loss without needing to explain it. Eleanor was my friend, Grace said finally. Not close, but we talked at HOA meetings. She was the only one who stood up to Patricia. Everyone else was too afraid. When Tom died, Eleanor sent me flowers every week for 3 months. Patricia sent me violation notices. For what? My lawn. Tom always did the lawn. I did not know how to use the riding mower. The grass got too long. Patricia fined me $200. Then the gutters needed cleaning. Tom always cleaned the gutters. Another fine. The driveway had oil stains from Tom's truck. Fine. The mailbox was crooked. Fine. Grace was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I was drowning in grief and she was drowning me in fines. Thousands of dollars. I had money from Tom's life insurance, but the fees kept piling up. Then she started showing up at my house, unannounced, inspecting, finding new violations. Why did you not fight back? Because I was broken, Grace whispered. Tom and I had been married for 35 years. We met in college. He was my whole world. When he died, I did not know how to exist. Patricia knew that. She knew I was vulnerable, and she used it. When did you sell? 3 months after Tom died. I could not take it anymore. Patricia had her lawyer send a letter threatening to put a lien on the house if I did not pay the accumulated fines. It was over $20,000. I sold to her development company for less than the house was worth just to escape. I felt sick. This was evil, calculated, deliberate evil. Where were the other neighbors? Did no one try to help? Grace shook her head. Everyone is afraid of her. She has destroyed anyone who challenged her. There was a family, the Parks, who ran a small catering business from their home. Patricia got them shut down for zoning violations. They lost their livelihood, had to move to Idaho. There was another family, the Riveras, whose adult children lived with them. Patricia called it overcrowding, harassed them until they left. And no one stopped her? No one dared. I pulled out a piece of paper and showed it to Grace. This is from the HOA bylaws. Any property owner can petition for an emergency election with 25% of resident signatures. 20 signatures. If we can get 20 people to sign, we can vote Patricia out. Grace stared at the paper like it was a snake. You want to run against her? Yes. Diana, you will lose. She has run this HOA for 8 years. She has all the power, all the connections. Maybe, I said. But I have something she does not have. What? Nothing left to lose. I am already widowed, already grieving, already broke. What more can she take from me? Grace was quiet for a long time. Then she said, she can take your hope. That is what she took from me. The hope that things could be better. So help me prove her wrong. Help me show her that women like us are not as weak as she thinks we are. I cannot, Grace whispered. I am sorry. I want to, but I cannot. I stood to leave. If you change your mind, I live at Rosewood Manor. The door is always open. As I reached for the doorknob, Grace said, wait. I turned. There are others, she said. Other women she has hurt. If you are serious about this, about fighting her, there is someone you should meet. Caroline Jang. She runs a bookstore out of her house on Oak Street. Patricia is trying to shut her down. Thank you, I said. Grace walked me to the door. Diana, she said as I was leaving, your grandmother was the bravest woman I ever knew. I hope you inherited more than just her house. I drove to Oak Street with my heart pounding. One potential ally was not enough. I needed an army. I needed women who had been broken but were ready to stand up again. The house at 428 Oak Street was a charming craftsman style with a discreet sign in the window, the Book Nook by appointment only. I parked and walked up the steps, noticing the meticulous garden, the fresh paint, everything maintained to perfection. Someone who was trying very hard not to give Patricia ammunition. I rang the bell. The woman who answered was Chinese American, maybe mid-50s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes behind trendy glasses. She looked me up and down. I do not know you. I am Diana Morrison. I am new to the neighborhood. Not buying anything today. She started to close the door. I'm not here to buy books. I am here because Patricia Blackwood is trying to destroy us both. The door stopped moving. Caroline's eyes narrowed. Who told you about me? Grace Hartford. Caroline glanced past me at the street, then pulled me inside quickly and shut the door. The interior of her house had been converted into a beautiful bookstore, floor-to-ceiling shelves, reading nooks. The smell of coffee and old paper, it was perfect. This is amazing, I said. It is also illegal, according to Patricia. Caroline crossed her arms. She says I am running a commercial enterprise in a residential zone. Never mind that I only see customers by appointment. Never mind that I make maybe $2,000 a month, barely enough to cover property taxes. She wants me shut down. Why? Because I am divorced and living alone, and she thinks that makes me weak. Caroline's voice was bitter. My husband left me 2 years ago for a woman half my age. Standard midlife crisis nonsense. The divorce was ugly. I got the house, but not much else. I needed income, so I started the bookstore. It gave me purpose, gave me a reason to get out of bed. And Patricia went after you. The moment she found out, violation notices, threats. She reported me to the city for zoning violations. I have spent $15,000 on lawyers. I am appealing the city's order to cease business operations, but it is only a matter of time. Caroline walked to her window and looked out at the street. I am 55 years old. I have a master's degree in literature and 30 years of teaching experience, but no school will hire me because I took 10 years off to raise my kids. I am too old, they say, not current enough. So I sell books from my house, and Patricia Blackwood wants to take even that away from me. I joined her at the window. I'm trying to get enough signatures to call an emergency election. Vote Patricia out. Install someone who actually cares about people instead of just property values. You are serious? Yes. Caroline turned to look at me. You are either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. For the first time, she smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. How many signatures do you have? None yet. I need 20. You will never get them. Everyone is too afraid. That is what Grace said, but I have to try. Caroline studied me for a long moment. Then she went to her desk and pulled out a pen. Where do I sign? That afternoon, I had 2 signatures. My own and Caroline's. Only 18 more to go. Caroline made coffee, and we sat in her reading nook, surrounded by books. She told me about other families Patricia had targeted. The Johnsons, whose teenage son worked on his car in the garage. Patricia called it a mechanic shop, got them fined into submission. They moved to Oregon City. The Tanaka family, whose elderly mother lived with them. Patricia called it overcrowding. They sold. The Washingtons, a young Black family who put up a Black Lives Matter sign. Patricia said political signs violated community standards. They fought for 6 months before giving up. It is always someone she perceives as different, Caroline said. Someone who does not fit her vision of what Thornton Heights should be. Perfect white families with perfect white teeth in perfect white houses. Does anyone know why she's like this? I did some research, Caroline said. She pulled out a folder. Patricia's maiden name was Whitmore. Old Portland family. Money, status, the whole package. She married Richard Blackwood in 1993. He was a real estate developer. Big money. They built a mansion on 10 acres, right where Thornton Heights is now. What happened? The 2008 recession. Richard's company went bankrupt. They lost everything. The mansion was foreclosed. And Richard, being the stand-up guy he was, had an affair with his 26-year-old secretary and left Patricia. She was 48 years old, no recent work history, and suddenly homeless and alone. I felt an unwelcome twinge of sympathy. I knew what it was like to be middle-aged and suddenly alone. The fear, the invisibility, the feeling that your life was over. So she rebuilt, Caroline continued, became a real estate agent, worked her way up, married George Ashford when she was 52. He is loaded, owns half the commercial real estate in Portland. She convinced him to buy the land where her old mansion used to be and develop Thornton Heights. She created the HOA with the strictest rules possible. Complete control over everything. She is trying to control the chaos that destroyed her life, I said softly. Yes, Caroline agreed, but she is destroying other people in the process. And that I cannot forgive. We talked for another hour, strategizing. Caroline knew the neighborhood better than I did. She told me which families might be sympathetic, which ones were Patricia's loyal followers, which ones were on the fence. As I was leaving, Caroline said, Diana, you should know something. Patricia does not just destroy financially. She destroys emotionally too. She will find your weakest point and exploit it. Be ready. I thought about that warning all the way home. What was my weakest point? Zoe. Definitely Zoe. Patricia would see an 8-year-old girl as leverage. When I picked up Zoe from camp, I held her extra tight. That evening, Maggie came over for tea. I told her about Grace and Caroline and my plan to get signatures for an election petition. Maggie's eyes lit up. Eleanor would be so proud. You are doing exactly what she wanted. Will you sign? Love, I will do more than sign. I will help you get signatures. I know everyone in this neighborhood. Been here 20 years. People trust me. Why did you not fight Patricia yourself? Maggie looked down at her tea. Because I am a coward. I watched her destroy Eleanor, watched her destroy Grace, watched her drive out good people. And I did nothing. I am ashamed of that. It is not too late, I said. No, she agreed. It is not. Over the next week, Maggie and I went door to door. We started with the houses farthest from Patricia's, the ones on the edges of Thornton Heights. the people who might feel less watched. Most doors did not open. Those that did often closed again quickly when we mentioned Patricia's name. We were threatened. We were cursed at. One man told us we were troublemaking women who should know our place. But slowly, painfully, we collected signatures. A widow named Helen Park, whose husband had died in a car accident. Patricia had harassed her for leaving the car in the driveway while she was at the hospital, identifying her husband's body. A divorced woman named Susan Martinez, whose ex-husband's affair had been public knowledge. Patricia had made cruel jokes about it at HOA meetings. A retired surgeon named Dr. Jennifer Walsh, whose husband had died by suicide. Patricia had spread rumors that Jennifer had driven him to it. The pattern was clear. Patricia targeted women over 50 who had lost partners. Women she saw as weak. Women who reminded her of who she used to be. By the end of the week, we had 12 signatures, more than halfway there. But the easy targets were done. Now we needed to convince people who were more afraid. I was sitting on my porch one evening, exhausted and discouraged, when a car pulled up. A man got out. Tall, Asian American, late 50s maybe, with kind eyes and graying hair. "Mrs. Morrison, I am Thomas Chen. I live across the street." I stood up. "Nice to meet you." He walked up the path slowly, looking at Rosewood Manor with appreciation. "This house is beautiful. I have always loved it. Your grandmother maintained it so well." "Thank you. I heard what you were doing, the petition. I wanted to help." My heart lifted. "You will sign?" "More than that. I am a retired attorney. Real estate law was my specialty. If you are going to take on Patricia Blackwood, you will need legal advice. I am offering it. Pro bono." I almost started crying. "Why would you do that?" Thomas looked at his house across the street, then back at me. "My wife Sarah died 2 years ago. Cancer. During her final months, I was with her constantly. Could not keep up with the lawn, the maintenance. Patricia sent violation notices. While my wife was dying, I will never forgive that." "I'm so sorry." He smiled sadly. "Sarah would have liked you. She always said someone needed to stand up to Patricia. I think she would want me to help you do it." "Come inside," I said. "Let me make some tea." We sat in Eleanor's kitchen, and I showed Thomas everything. The violation notices, the bylaws, the signature petition. He read through it all carefully, making notes on a legal pad he pulled from his briefcase. "This is solid," he said finally. "You have grounds for an emergency election. Patricia will try to fight it, but if you have the required signatures, she cannot stop it." "What will she do when I file the petition?" Thomas looked grim. "Everything she can to destroy you first. Expect escalation. More violations, legal threats, personal attacks. She will try to break you before the election happens." "I am already broken," I said quietly. "My husband is dead. I am living on widow's benefits. I have an 8-year-old granddaughter depending on me. There is not much lower I can go." Thomas reached across the table and put his hand over mine. "Then you are more dangerous than she realizes. People who have nothing left to lose are the hardest to defeat." His hand was warm. It had been 6 months since anyone had touched me with kindness instead of pity. I found myself holding on maybe a moment too long before pulling away. Over the next few days, Thomas became a regular visitor. He brought legal books. We strategized together. He explained HOA law, property rights, election procedures. And slowly, without either of us meaning for it to happen, something else grew between us. It was in the way he looked at me when I was talking, the way he laughed at my jokes, the way he found excuses to touch my shoulder, my hand, my arm. It was in the way my heart beat faster when I saw his car pull up, the way I started wearing makeup and nicer clothes when I knew he was coming over. We were two people drowning in grief, finding an unexpected lifeline in each other. One evening, as he was leaving, he paused at the door. "Diana, I want you to know something. These past few weeks, helping you, being here, it is the first time I have felt alive since Sarah died." "I know what you mean," I said softly. He looked like he wanted to say more. Instead, he just smiled and left. But the air between us was charged with everything unspoken. That night, I lay in bed feeling guilty and confused. Richard had been dead for only 6 months. Was it wrong to feel attracted to someone else so soon? Was I betraying his memory? But then I thought about Eleanor's letter. "Do not disappear," she had written. I had been disappearing into grief. Maybe Thomas was helping me come back. The next morning, everything changed. I was making breakfast when my phone rang. Ashley, calling from Singapore. "Mom," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "Something happened with Zoe." My blood went cold. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She had an asthma attack at camp yesterday, a bad one. They had to call an ambulance." I looked up and saw Zoe at the kitchen table eating cereal perfectly fine. Wait, yesterday? Why am I just hearing about this now? The camp called me as her primary contact. "I have been trying to reach you for hours." I looked at my phone, 6 missed calls. I had been at Caroline's bookstore with the ringer off, working on the petition. "Oh God, Ashley, I'm so sorry. Is she okay?" "She is fine now. But Mom, this is serious. Her asthma has not been this bad in years. The doctor thinks it might be stress-related." "Stress?" She is 8 years old. Kids pick up on adult stress. If you are dealing with this HOA thing, the fighting with that Patricia woman, Zoe is probably absorbing all of that anxiety. The guilt hit me like a truck. I had been so focused on fighting Patricia that I had not noticed Zoe struggling. What kind of grandmother was I? "Maybe it would be better if she came to Singapore with us," Ashley said gently. "I know it is not ideal, but her health has to come first." "No," I said. "No, I will fix this. I will make sure she's okay." After I hung up, I sat down heavily. Zoe looked at me with worried eyes. "Am I in trouble, Grandma?" "No, baby, never. Come here." She climbed into my lap. Too big for it, really, but still my little girl. I held her tight. "Your mom says you had an asthma attack yesterday. It was not a big one. I just could not breathe good for a little bit." "Were you scared?" "A little, but the camp nurse was nice, and the ambulance had cool lights. She was trying to be brave, trying not to worry me." My heart broke. "Zoe, I need you to tell me the truth. Have you been feeling stressed, worried about anything?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I heard you and that lady arguing, the one who came to the door. She was yelling at you." "Patricia." "She said mean things about our house, about you. It made me scared." "Scared of what?" "That we might have to leave, like in Seattle, when we got the pink paper that said we had to go." "Oh, sweetheart." I pulled her closer. "We are not leaving. This is our home." "But what if that lady makes us?" "She cannot make us, I promise." But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Caroline had warned me, "Patricia will find your weakest point and exploit it," and she had found it, Zoe. That afternoon, I called a meeting with Maggie, Caroline, and Thomas at Rosewood Manor. I told them about Zoe's asthma attack, about Ashley's call, about my fear that fighting Patricia was hurting the person I loved most. "Maybe I should stop," I said. "Maybe it is not worth it if Zoe is suffering." Thomas shook his head. "Diana, this is exactly what Patricia wants. She wants you to feel guilty, to doubt yourself, to give up. But Zoe's health is more important than any fight." Caroline leaned forward. "Is it? Or is teaching Zoe to stand up to bullies the most important thing you could do?" "I do not want her to be brave. I want her to be safe." Maggie put her hand on my arm. "Love, Eleanor faced the same choice. Keep fighting and risk her health, or give up and be safe. She kept fighting, and it destroyed her. But she did it so you would not have to." "I know, but I am not Eleanor. I am just a widow who inherited a house I cannot afford to keep. I am in over my head." The room was quiet. Then Thomas said, "My wife Sarah was a fighter, fought cancer for 3 years. Toward the end, she said something I will never forget. She said, 'Thomas, the only thing worse than dying from fighting is dying from giving up. At least if I fight, I die as myself.'" Tears rolled down my face. "I do not know if I am strong enough." "You do not have to be strong alone," Caroline said. "That is why you have us." Over the next 2 days, something shifted in me. I spent more time with Zoe. We painted together in Eleanor's studio. We planted more flowers in the garden. We read books and played games, and I made sure she knew she was the most important thing in my life. But I did not stop collecting signatures. Thomas helped me canvass the neighborhood. His presence made people more comfortable. A retired attorney carried weight. We got 3 more signatures. Maggie organized a coffee morning at her house and invited every woman over 50 in Thornton Heights. 15 showed up. After an hour of talking, 5 signed the petition. We were at 20 signatures. We had done it. That night, I sat in Eleanor's art studio and looked at her unfinished self-portrait. A woman painting herself into existence. A woman who had fought and lost but believed her granddaughter could win. I pulled out a blank canvas and set it on the easel. For the first time in 30 years, I picked up a paintbrush. I did not know what I was painting at first. I let my hand move, let the colors flow. And slowly, an image emerged. Rosewood Manor, surrounded by wildflowers. And in the window, a woman looking out. Not old, not young, just visible. I painted until midnight. When I finally set down the brush, I felt something I had not felt in months. Peace. The next morning, I filed the petition with the HOA board. 20 signatures, notarized and official. Thomas came with me for moral support. The HOA secretary, a nervous woman named Janet, counted the signatures 3 times. Her hands were shaking. "This is all in order," she said quietly. "According to the bylaws, an emergency election must be held within 14 days. "Thank you," I said. As we were leaving, Janet whispered, "Mrs. Morrison, be careful. Mrs. Blackwood is not going to take this well." She was right. That afternoon, my phone rang. Patricia. I answered. "Hello? What do you think you are doing?" Her voice was shaking with rage. "Exercising my rights as a homeowner. You filed a petition for an emergency election. Do you have any idea what you have started?" "Yes. I am starting the end of your reign of terror." There was a long pause. Then Patricia's voice went cold and quiet. Dangerous quiet. "Mrs. Morrison, you have no idea who you are dealing with. I have run this HOA for 8 years. I have connections, resources, power. You are a widow who has lived here for 3 weeks. You are nothing." "Maybe," I said, "but I am a nothing who is no longer afraid of you. We will see about that. This election will destroy you. I will make sure every person in this neighborhood knows exactly who you are. A desperate widow trying to turn our community into a slum. An unfit guardian who cannot even keep her granddaughter safe." My blood went cold. "What did you say?" "I know about the asthma attack, about the ambulance, about your daughter wanting to take Zoe away because you are too unstable to care for her. You have been spying on me. I protect this neighborhood. That includes knowing when unsuitable people are putting children at risk. Zoe is perfectly safe." "Is she? Because from where I stand, you are so obsessed with this vendetta against me that you are neglecting an 8-year-old child. That is going to be my campaign message. Vote for stability. Vote for someone who puts the community first instead of personal grudges." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone in hand, shaking with rage and fear. She was going to make this about Zoe, about my fitness as a guardian, about my mental state. Thomas found me an hour later, sitting on the porch, staring at nothing. "She knows about Zoe," I said. "She is going to use it against me." He sat down beside me. "Of course she is. That is what bullies do. They find your weakness and attack it. So what do? You tell the truth. You are a widow doing your best. You are a grandmother who loves her granddaughter. You are a woman standing up to injustice. Those things are not weaknesses. They are strengths." He took my hand. "And you are not alone." That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Patricia's threats, about Zoe, about the election, about everything I stood to lose. Around midnight, I heard a sound outside, breaking glass. I ran to the window and looked out. Someone had spray painted the front of Rosewood Manor. Big red letters. "Go home." And below it, "You don't belong here." I stood there in my nightgown looking at those words, and something inside me snapped, not broke, snapped into place. She was right. I did not belong in Thornton Heights. Not in her version of it, anyway. But maybe that was exactly why I needed to stay. To show that there was room for people who did not fit. For old houses and wild gardens and widows who refused to disappear. I went downstairs, got a bucket and soap, and started scrubbing the paint off my house at 1 a.m. I scrubbed and cried and laughed and scrubbed some more. Thomas found me there at dawn, still scrubbing. He did not ask questions. He just picked up a brush and started helping. By the time the sun was fully up, the paint was mostly gone. And I was ready. Ready for whatever Patricia threw at me next. The war had begun. And I was not backing down. The vandalism changed something in the neighborhood. Word spread fast in Thornton Heights. By noon that day, I had 7 people stop by Rosewood Manor. Some brought food, some brought paint to help finish cleaning. Some just came to say they were sorry. And 3 of them signed my petition. Patricia had miscalculated. She thought destroying my property would scare people. Instead, it made them angry. Made them remember all the times she had gone too far. All the times they had watched her cruelty and done nothing. Now they were doing something. The election was set for 3 weeks away, 21 days. Patricia announced her candidacy the same afternoon I filed my petition, as if there had ever been any doubt she would run. The battle lines were drawn. Her campaign began immediately. Professional, polished, expensive. Glossy flyers appeared in every mailbox within 48 hours. The design was immaculate. Photos of Patricia in elegant business attire, standing in front of pristine Thornton Heights homes. The tagline, experience, stability, excellence. Inside, the flyer detailed her accomplishments. 8 years as HOA president. Property values increased by 42%. Zero crime. Immaculate neighborhood standards maintained. A list of improvements she had overseen, from new streetlights to updated landscaping in common areas. It was impressive. It was also a lie by omission. Nowhere did it mention the families she had forced out, the widows she had harassed, the lives she had destroyed in pursuit of her perfect vision. My campaign budget was $800, collected in small donations from supporters. Most gave $20 or $50. Helen Park gave $100 despite being on a fixed income. Caroline gave $200 and told me it was worth every penny. Thomas helped me design flyers on his laptop. Nothing fancy, just my photo, taken by Maggie in Eleanor's garden, surrounded by wildflowers. The tagline was Zoe's idea, kindness over fear. We listed simple promises. Listen to all residents, reduce mandatory fees, focus on people, not just property. Create a community where everyone belongs. Zoe and her new friend Sophie from down the street helped distribute flyers. They went door to door with the kind of fearless enthusiasm only 8-year-olds possess. Most people could not say no to 2 little girls with hand-drawn additions on the flyers. Zoe had added flowers to mine. Sophie had added smiley faces. But Patricia's machine was well-oiled and powerful. Within a week, attack ads appeared in mailboxes. These were not subtle. The headline read, "Can we trust someone in crisis?" Below was an unflattering photo of me, clearly taken without my knowledge, looking exhausted and disheveled. Must have been the morning after the vandalism, when I was still in my nightgown, scrubbing paint. The text raised questions about my stability. Recently widowed, no employment history. Moved to Thornton Heights only weeks ago. Does she understand our community's needs? Can someone going through personal trauma make rational decisions? And then, the knife. Recent emergency involving her granddaughter raises concerns about judgment and priorities. I read it in my kitchen and felt physically sick. She was using Zoe, using an 8-year-old's asthma attack to question my fitness as a leader. Thomas found me crying at the table. She is using my granddaughter against me. He read the flyer, his jaw tightening. This is low, even for Patricia. What do I do? If I defend myself, I draw more attention to it. If I ignore it, people will think it is true. You tell the truth, he said. You are a widow, yes. That does not make you weak. It makes you strong. You survived losing your partner. That takes courage most people never have to find. He pulled up a chair and sat beside me. Sarah's death nearly destroyed me. I isolated. I stopped caring about anything. Your fight, Diana, it reminded me that life does not end when we lose someone we love. It just changes. You are not in crisis. You are in transformation. There is a difference. I looked at this man who barely knew me but saw me anyway. Really saw me. Not the widow, not the victim, just me. Thank you, I whispered. His hand covered mine on the table. We can fight this together. The debate was scheduled for 1 week before the election. Mandatory attendance for both candidates. Open to all Thornton Heights residents. The community center was booked, with seating for 120. Thomas helped me prepare. We sat in Eleanor's living room every evening, him asking me practice questions, me stumbling through answers. I was not a public speaker. Never had been. The idea of standing in front of 100 people terrified me. What if I freeze? What if I say something stupid? You will not, Thomas assured me. You just need to be yourself. That is your strength. Patricia is polished and practiced. You are real and honest. People will respond to that. Maggie had different advice. Love, do not try to out-debate her. You cannot win that way. She has been doing this for years. Instead, tell your story. Tell Eleanor's story. Tell the stories of all the women she hurt. Make it personal. Caroline was blunter. Patricia will try to rattle you. Probably bring up Zoe again, or Richard, or something else painful. Do not take the bait. Stay calm. Remember why you are doing this. The night before the debate, I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything that could go wrong. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock at my bedroom door. "Grandma?" It was Zoe. "Come in, sweetheart." She padded in wearing her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I had a bad dream. I lifted the covers and she climbed in beside me, snuggling close. We lay there in the darkness, her small, warm body against mine. "Grandma, are you scared about tomorrow?" "Yes," I admitted, very scared. "Why?" "Because I am not good at talking in front of people, and there will be lots of people watching." "But you are good at being brave," she said matter-of-factly. "You are the bravest person I know." "Sweetheart, I am not brave. I am terrified most of the time." "Being brave does not mean not being scared," Zoe said. "It means doing the thing even when you are scared. My teacher told me that." I kissed the top of her head. "When did you get so wise?" "I am 8, she said seriously. "I know lots of things." We fell asleep like that, grandmother and granddaughter, gathering strength from each other. The debate was scheduled for 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. I arrived at 6:30, my stomach in knots. Thomas came with me, Maggie, Caroline. Grace even came, though she sat in the back and would not make eye contact with anyone. The room filled quickly, every seat taken by 6:45, people standing along the walls. I recognized maybe half of them. The other half were strangers, probably Patricia's supporters. Patricia arrived at 6:50, wearing a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. She looked confident and powerful and completely in control. I was wearing a simple dress that Ashley had shipped from Boston. My hair was pulled back in a bun. My hands would not stop shaking. The moderator was a local news reporter named Michael Chen, no relation to Thomas. He explained the format: opening statements, 3 minutes each, questions from the audience, closing statements, strictly timed, professionally recorded. Patricia won the coin toss and chose to go first. She stood at the podium like she owned it. "Good evening, Thornton Heights. For 8 years, I have had the honor of serving as your HOA president. In that time, we have built something special. A community of excellence, a neighborhood where property values have soared, where standards are maintained, where families can feel safe and proud." Her voice was smooth, practiced. "I have made difficult decisions. Not everyone has agreed with every choice. But leadership is not about being popular. It is about protecting what we have built together. It is about ensuring that Thornton Heights remains a premier community." She turned and looked directly at me. "My opponent is new to our neighborhood. She has no experience in community leadership. She is going through a difficult personal time. I sympathize with that. Truly, I do. But sympathy does not qualify someone to run an organization this important." She paused for effect. "This election is about who can protect our investments, our homes, our community standards. I have proven I can do that. The question is, can she?" Applause from her supporters, polite but not overwhelming. Then it was my turn. I stood at the podium and looked out at all those faces. Some friendly, some hostile, some just curious. My notes trembled in my hands. I started reading. "My name is Diana Morrison. I am 52 years old. I am a widow. I inherited my grandmother Eleanor's house 3 months ago." My voice was shaking. I could hear it. Everyone could hear it. I looked down at my notes. All the careful words Thomas and I had prepared. All the logical arguments about property rights and community values. And I realized none of it mattered. I set the notes down and just talked. I am not a politician. I am not polished or experienced. Patricia is right about that. But I know what it is like to lose everything. I know what it is like to be invisible, to be judged, to be told you do not belong. I looked at Grace in the back row. I know what it is like to be targeted when you are vulnerable, to have someone use your weakness against you, to be harassed until you give up and leave. My voice was getting stronger. I spent 30 years making myself small, making everyone else comfortable, saying yes when I wanted to say no. My grandmother did the same thing. Then my grandfather died, and she finally found her voice. She bought Rosewood Manor with money she earned from her paintings. She created a space where she could be herself. And Patricia Blackwood spent 10 years trying to take that away from her. Gasps from the audience. Patricia's face went rigid. "I am not running because I want power. I'm running because I want community. Real community." where people support each other instead of tearing each other down, where we value people, not just property, where widows do not get harassed while they are grieving, where divorced women can start businesses without being threatened, where families can live without fear. I looked directly at Patricia. Eleanor fought you for years. You won because the dementia took her mind before you could take her house. But I am here now, and I am not going anywhere. The room erupted, half in applause, half in angry muttering. Michael Chen had to call for order. The question section was brutal. Patricia's supporters asked about my qualifications, my plans, my finances. One woman asked if I was mentally stable enough to lead given my recent loss. Another asked about Zoe's asthma attack and whether I was neglecting my granddaughter. That question came from a woman I did not recognize. Perfectly styled, expensive clothes. Definitely one of Patricia's people. Mrs. Morrison, is it true your granddaughter was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance while in your care? My face burned. Yes. She had an asthma attack at camp. It was managed appropriately by trained staff. But she is only 8 years old. Some might question whether you should be focused on a political campaign when you have a child to care for. I felt anger rising. My granddaughter is perfectly cared for. She is happy, healthy, and safe. Her asthma attack was not caused by neglect. It was caused by stress. And you want to know what stressed her? She heard Patricia Blackwood threatening me, threatening our home. An 8-year-old girl should not have to worry about losing her house because someone does not like how it looks. The room went silent. Children pick up on adult fear, I continued. Zoe has been through enough. She lost her grandfather 6 months ago, watched her grandmother fall apart, moved across the country to live with me while her parents relocate for work. She does not need to also worry about bullies. Adult bullies who should know better. I looked at Patricia. Shame on you for using a child as a weapon. Patricia stood up, her face red. I have never threatened a child. This is absurd. You threatened our home. To an 8-year-old, that is the same thing. The moderator intervened, calling for the next question. But the damage was done. Or the victory was won. Hard to tell which. Thomas asked a question from the audience, carefully worded to let me talk about specific policy changes. Reducing HOA fees from $750 to $200 a month. Eliminating aesthetic requirements. Creating community programs instead of just enforcement. Caroline asked about supporting small businesses run from homes. I talked about her bookstore, how it brought value to the community, how shutting it down hurt everyone. Helen Park stood up, her voice shaking. Mrs. Blackwood, 3 years ago my husband died in a car accident, the day after his funeral, while I was still in shock. I received a violation notice from you about my car being in the driveway. The car he died in. Can you explain that? Patricia looked genuinely caught off guard. Mrs. Park, that was not personal. It was standard enforcement of parking regulations. He had just died. I was planning his funeral. And you sent me a fine. Rules exist for everyone, Patricia said stiffly. I cannot make exceptions based on personal circumstances. Why not? Helen's voice broke. Why can you not show compassion? Why can you not treat us like people instead of violations waiting to happen? Patricia had no answer. She sat down, her perfect composure cracking. More stories came out. The Johnsons, whose son worked on cars in the garage, had been forced to move. The Tanakas, whose elderly mother lived with them, had been harassed for overcrowding. The Washingtons, whose Black Lives Matter sign Patricia had called inappropriate. One by one, people stood up and shared how Patricia had hurt them. And with each story, her support crumbled a little more. My closing statement was simple. I am not perfect. I am broken and healing and learning as I go. But I care about people. I believe communities are built on kindness, not fear, on inclusion, not exclusion. If you elect me, I promise to listen, to serve, to make Thornton Heights a place where everyone belongs, even people like me, especially people like me. Patricia's closing was defensive. She talked about property values and standards and the importance of rules, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. She looked tired, defeated. When it was over, people lingered. Some came to shake my hand, some to thank me for speaking up, a few to tell me I had their vote. But I noticed Patricia leaving alone, no entourage, no supporters surrounding her, just a woman in an expensive suit, walking to her car by herself. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. The next morning, Zoe's school called. She had been in a fight. I drove to the elementary school with my heart pounding. Zoe had never been in a fight. She was gentle, artistic, sensitive. Fighting was not in her nature. The principal, Mrs. Davidson, met me in her office. Zoe was sitting in a chair, looking small and miserable. There was a red mark on her cheek. What happened? Mrs. Davidson folded her hands. Zoe got into an altercation with another student, a girl named Madison Blackwood. Blackwood, of course. What kind of altercation? According to witnesses, Madison said something unkind about you, about your family. Zoe responded physically. I looked at Zoe. What did she say? Zoe's eyes filled with tears. She said you were crazy, that everyone knows it, that we are going to get kicked out of the neighborhood because you are too stupid to follow rules. I felt my blood boil. And what did you do? I pushed her. She fell down. Then I might have pulled her hair. Under other circumstances, I might have been proud. My gentle granddaughter, defending her family. But this was school. There were rules. Mrs. Davidson cleared her throat. Normally, physical violence results in suspension. However, given the circumstances, and the fact that Madison admitted to verbal provocation, we are giving both girls a warning. But Diana, I need to be honest with you. She looked uncomfortable. Madison's mother is Patricia Blackwood's stepdaughter. She has already called, demanding Zoe be expelled. She is threatening to go to the school board. Of course she is. I cannot protect Zoe if this happens again. The Blackwood family has influence. A second incident and my hands will be tied. I understood. Politics reached even into elementary school. I drove Zoe home in silence. She stared out the window, tears running down her face. When we got home, I took her to Eleanor's art studio and sat her down. Sweetheart, I am not mad at you.
You are not?
No. You were defending our family. That takes courage, but violence is not the answer. Even when someone is cruel. But she said mean things about you. I know, and that hurts. But hitting her does not make the mean things untrue. It just gives them ammunition. What is ammunition? Reasons to attack us more. Now they can say we are violent, unstable, dangerous. Zoe's face crumpled. I made it worse. No, baby, you were brave. But there are different kinds of brave. Sometimes the bravest thing is walking away. She climbed into my lap, too big for it really, but still my little girl. I am sorry, Grandma. I know. That night, Ashley called. She had heard about the fight from the school. Word traveled fast. Mom, this is getting out of hand. Zoe is getting hurt. Physically hurt. Maybe it is time to step back from this election thing. Ashley, she got in a fight. Kids get in fights. Not Zoe. She has never been violent. This is not like her. And that mark on her face? What if it had been worse? What if she had really hurt that other girl? She was defending me. She is 8 years old. She should not have to defend you. You are the adult. The words hit like a slap. I know I am the adult. I know what I am doing. Do you? Because from here, it looks like you are so obsessed with this fight against Patricia that you are forgetting about Zoe. That is not fair. Is it not? You moved her across the country, put her in a new school, got her involved in your battle with the HOA. Now she is having asthma attacks and getting in fights. When does it stop, Mom? When does Zoe's well-being come first? I hung up on her. Actually hung up on my own daughter. Then I sat on the floor of the kitchen and cried. Thomas found me there an hour later. He had knocked, but I had not answered, so he used the key I had given him for emergencies. This qualified. He sat down on the floor beside me. Talk to me. I told him everything. The fight, Ashley's call, my fear that I was destroying Zoe's childhood because I was too proud to back down. Maybe I should withdraw from the election. Maybe Ashley is right. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, when Sarah was dying, my sons wanted me to quit my job, focus on her full time. They were right, but I did not listen. I kept working because work felt like the one thing I could control. I could not control cancer. I could not save Sarah, but I could win cases. I could bill hours. I could pretend everything was normal. He looked at me. I regret that now. I should have spent every moment with her. But here's what I learned. Sometimes we make the wrong choice for the right reasons. You are fighting this election because you want to protect Zoe. You want her to grow up in a world where people like Patricia do not win. That is not a bad reason, but it is hurting her now. Maybe. Or maybe you are teaching her something more valuable. You are teaching her not to accept injustice, not to make herself small, not to let bullies win. What if the cost is too high? Then you will know you tried. And that matters too. I leaned against him, and he put his arm around me. We sat there on the kitchen floor, two broken people holding each other up. The next day, I made a decision. I called a press conference. Well, not exactly a press conference, more like I invited the local news station to Rosewood Manor and hoped they would show up. They did. Michael Chen came with a camera operator. I stood on my front porch with Zoe beside me. I had asked her permission, and she had agreed. We held hands. My name is Diana Morrison, and this is my granddaughter, Zoe. Yesterday, Zoe got in a fight at school. She was defending me against verbal attacks. She was wrong to use violence. We have talked about that. But I want everyone to know why it happened. I looked directly into the camera. Since I announced my candidacy for HOA president, my 8-year-old granddaughter has been targeted. Adult women have confronted her at school. She has been told her family is going to be kicked out of our home. She has listened to threats against me, against us. She developed stress-related asthma attacks. And yesterday, she finally cracked under the pressure. Zoe squeezed my hand. I want to be clear. This is not about political differences. This is about how we treat children, how we treat anyone who is different or vulnerable. Patricia Blackwood has built a campaign on fear and exclusion. My granddaughter is collateral damage. I paused. But I am not withdrawing from this race. I am staying in it because Zoe deserves to live in a community that values kindness over power. She deserves to see her grandmother stand up to bullies instead of running away. And most importantly, she deserves a world where being different is not a crime. The interview aired that night. It went viral by morning. Suddenly, news vans were parked on my street. National outlets picked up the story. Woman runs for HOA president to protect granddaughter from harassment. 8-year-old caught in HOA war. The David versus Goliath story that America loves. Patricia released a statement denying any targeting of children. But the damage was done, or rather, the truth was out. The election was 3 days away. I spent those days in a blur of interviews, door-knocking, last-minute campaigning. Thomas was with me constantly. Maggie, Caroline, even Grace, who finally found the courage to publicly support me. The night before the election, I could not sleep again. I wandered down to Eleanor's art studio and sat at her easel. The self-portrait stared back at me, a woman painting herself into existence. I picked up a brush and added something to my own painting. The woman in the window of Rosewood Manor. I gave her a face now, not young, not old, just visible, just real, just me. Election day dawned gray and rainy, appropriate weather for drama. The polls opened at 7 a.m. and closed at 7 p.m. Voting took place at the community center. Residents could vote in person or by mail. We would know the results by 9 p.m. I voted at 7:15 with Zoe beside me, teaching moment, showing her that women's voices matter, that participation matters, that fighting matters. Then there was nothing to do but wait. Thomas had organized a gathering at Rosewood Manor for my supporters. They started arriving around 6. Maggie with food, Caroline with wine, Grace with flowers, Helen and Susan and Jennifer. The women Patricia had broken who were putting themselves back together. We tried to eat, tried to talk, tried to pretend we were not watching the clock. At 8:45, my phone rang. Janet, the HOA secretary. "Mrs. Morrison, the counting is done. You should come to the community center for the announcement." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Can you tell me now?" "It needs to be official. Public, please come." We drove to the community center in a caravan. 5 cars full of supporters. The parking lot was packed. Must have been 150 people inside. Record turnout. Patricia was already there, sitting in the front row with her supporters. She looked composed, confident. She had probably already heard the results through her connections. I sat in the back with my people. Zoe on one side, Thomas on the other. My heart was beating so fast I thought I might pass out. Janet stood at the podium with the official count. The room went silent. Ballots cast 124. This is the highest turnout in Thornton Heights history. Murmurs of surprise. The votes were counted by 3 witnesses from the HOA board. All signatures verified. The results are as follows. She paused. The silence was unbearable. For HOA president, Patricia Blackwood, 57 votes. My heart sank. 57. That was more than I expected. Diana Morrison, 67 votes. The room exploded. Cheers from my supporters, gasps from Patricia's, applause that shook the walls. I had won, by 10 votes, but I had won. Zoe threw her arms around me. Grandma, you won, you won! Thomas kissed my forehead. Told you. People surrounded me, hugging me, congratulating me, thanking me. I was crying and laughing and overwhelmed. But through the chaos, I saw Patricia. She was sitting alone now. Her supporters had melted away the moment the results were announced. She looked small, defeated, broken. I excused myself and walked over to her. She looked up at me with eyes full of tears. Congratulations, the community has spoken. I sat down beside her. Thank you for your service these past 8 years. She laughed bitterly. Service? Is that what we are calling it? You built something here. Property values really did increase. The neighborhood really is beautiful. But at what cost? She wiped her eyes. I see that now. Too late, but I see it. It is not too late, Patricia. You could help me. You know this community. You know how the HOA works. I could use your expertise. She stared at me. Why would you want my help? I tried to destroy you. Because I understand what made you this way. I understand being afraid, being alone, trying to control everything because you lost control once. I understand all of it. Patricia shook her head. You are a better person than I am. No, I am just a person who had people who did not give up on me. Let me not give up on you. She did not answer. She just stood up and walked out. But as she reached the door, she turned back. Your grandmother would be proud of you. Then she was gone. The celebration continued at Rosewood Manor until late. People I barely knew came by to congratulate me, to thank me, to tell me stories about Patricia's abuses they had been too afraid to share before. Around midnight, everyone finally left except Thomas. We sat on the porch, looking out at the quiet neighborhood. You did it, he said. We did it. He took my hand. Diana, I need to tell you something. These past few weeks, working with you, being near you, I have felt alive again, really alive. Not just existing, and I think I am falling in love with you. My breath caught. Thomas, You do not have to say anything. I know it is complicated. I know it is too soon. I know we are both still grieving. But I needed you to know. I am falling for you too, I whispered. And it terrifies me. Me too. We sat there in the darkness, holding hands like teenagers. Two broken people who had found each other in the wreckage. The phone rang inside. I almost did not answer. But something made me. It was Janet. Mrs. Morrison, I am sorry to call so late, but you need to know. Patricia has filed 47 legal challenges to the election. She is claiming voter irregularities. And there is something else. What? Her husband George filed for divorce this morning. He is taking everything. The house, the money, everything. She is going to lose it all. I hung up and stood there holding the phone. What is it? Thomas asked. She is not done fighting. And she just lost everything else in her life. So what do? We prepare for war, because this election was just the beginning. I looked out at Thornton Heights, at all the perfect houses sleeping under the stars. Somewhere out there, Patricia Blackwood was planning her next move. Somewhere out there, she was hurting and alone and dangerous. The war had begun, but now I had an army. I had a community. I had people who believed in me. I had won the battle. But the war for Thornton Heights was just getting started. The news about Patricia's divorce broke 2 days after my election victory. It was in the Portland Tribune, tucked into the business section. Prominent developer George Ashford files for divorce. The article was brief, clinical, focused on the business implications. George Ashford, 70 years old, worth an estimated $40 million, ending his 12-year marriage to Patricia Blackwood Ashford. Irreconcilable differences. The prenuptial agreement meant Patricia would receive nothing beyond a small settlement. The mansion, the cars, the investment accounts, all belonged to George. The article mentioned that George had been seen around Portland with a woman named Catherine Morris, 45, an art gallery owner. The implication was clear. Patricia was being left for a younger woman. Again. I read the article in my kitchen while Zoe ate cereal. The morning sun streamed through the windows. Birds sang in Eleanor's garden. Everything was peaceful. And somewhere across Thornton Heights, Patricia Blackwood's world was ending. I should have felt victorious. She had spent months trying to destroy me, had harassed my grandmother for years, had driven families from their homes, had used an 8-year-old girl as a weapon. justice, karma, whatever you wanted to call it. This was it. But all I felt was sad. Thomas came over that afternoon. He had seen the article too. We sat on the porch, watching Zoe and Sophie play in the garden. She is going to lose everything, I said. The house, the money, the HOA position, everything she built her identity around. Good, Thomas said. Then more gently, I know that sounds harsh. But Diana, she was cruel. She destroyed lives. This is consequence, not tragedy. I know, but I also know what it is like to lose everything. To be 50-something and alone and starting over. It is terrifying. You had grief. She had greed. There is a difference. Maybe. Or maybe we are all just trying to survive however we can. He took my hand. Your capacity for empathy never ceases to amaze me. But do not let compassion become complicity. She made choices. Now she faces consequences. That same afternoon, Patricia's lawyer sent a formal notice to the HOA board. 47 legal challenges to the election, each one claiming some irregularity, invalid signatures, improper procedures, voter fraud. It was a scattershot approach, throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. Thomas reviewed each challenge. This is desperation, he said. None of these have merit. She is stalling, buying time. For what? He looked grim. I do not know. But Patricia does not do anything without a plan. The HOA board scheduled an emergency meeting to address the challenges. Mandatory attendance for both Patricia and me. 3 days away. I spent those 3 days in a strange limbo. Technically, I was the new HOA president, but the legal challenges meant I could not officially take office. I could not make changes, could not implement new policies, could not do anything except wait. The morning of the board meeting, I woke to my phone ringing. Unknown number. I almost did not answer. Mrs. Morrison? A woman's voice shaking. This is Patricia Blackwood. I need to speak with you. Alone. Before the board meeting. My first instinct was to refuse, but something in her voice stopped me. She sounded broken. When and where? There is a coffee shop on Morrison Street. The Grind. Can you meet me in an hour? I will be there. Thomas wanted to come with me, so did Maggie, but I went alone. Some conversations need to happen without witnesses. The Grind was a small independent coffee shop, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Patricia was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth. I almost did not recognize her. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. No makeup. Her silver hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked older without all the armor. Smaller, more human. I sat down across from her. She had already ordered 2 coffees. She pushed one toward me. Thank you for coming. We sat in silence for a moment. She stared at her coffee like it held answers. George moved out yesterday, she said finally. Took everything that mattered. The Bentley, the artwork, the furniture. Left me the dishes and a check for $50,000. 12 years of marriage, $50,000. I'm sorry, she laughed bitterly. Are you? After everything I did to you? Yes, because I know what it is like to lose a partner. Even if the circumstances are different. Richard died. George just stopped pretending to love me. I am not sure which is worse. She looked up and I saw tears in her eyes. I know why you are here, Patricia. You want me to drop the legal challenges. No, she said. I want to drop them myself, but I do not know how. What do you mean? I have spent 8 years being this person. This Patricia, the one who fights and controls and never shows weakness. I do not know how to stop being her. Even when I want to, even when I know she is destroying me. Then just stop. Withdraw the challenges, walk away, and be nothing? Have nothing? I will lose the HOA president's salary, lose my position. George took the house. I will have to move to some small apartment, get a job. I am 64 years old with no recent work history. Who is going to hire me? I thought about my own struggles finding work after Richard died. The way employers looked at my resume and saw a gap where motherhood should have been valued. The subtle and not so subtle ageism. She was right. The world was not kind to women our age starting over. What happened to you, Patricia? Before all this? Before you became this person? She was quiet for a long time. Then she started talking. And once she started, the words poured out like water through a broken dam. I met Richard Blackwood when I was 26. He was 15 years older, successful, confident. I was young and beautiful and educated, but not quite sure what to do with any of it. I had a degree in architecture, but no real career. My parents were old Portland money, but not much of it left. Richard offered security. She stirred her coffee absently. I gave up everything for that marriage. My career ambitions, my friends, my identity. I became Mrs. Richard Blackwood, the perfect corporate wife, hosted dinners, smiled at events, made him look good. For 20 years. What happened in 2008? Everything collapsed. His company, our finances. Richard started drinking, started blaming me, said I was too expensive, too demanding, that maintaining me was bleeding him dry. Then the affair started, with his assistant. She was 26, the same age I had been when we met. I'm sorry. When he left, I was 48. We lost the house to foreclosure. I had no job, no savings in my name, no identity outside of being his wife. I was invisible. Men my age looked through me like I did not exist. Jobs I was qualified for went to younger women. I was erased. So you rebuilt. She nodded. Became a real estate agent. Worked 80-hour weeks. Clawed my way back up. Met George when I was 52. He was older, widowed, lonely. I knew he did not love me, but he offered security. And I was so tired of being afraid. When did you start the HOA? George bought the land where Richard's old mansion had been. Ironic, right? I convinced him to develop it, to build Thornton Heights. I created the HOA with strict rules because I thought if I controlled everything, I could prevent another collapse. If everything was perfect, nothing could go wrong. But you could not control everything, so you destroyed anyone who reminded you that control is an illusion. Yes, she met my eyes. Widows like you and Grace, divorced women like Caroline, anyone who represented vulnerability, anyone who reminded me of who I used to be. I punished them for my own weakness. Why are you telling me this? Because I am tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being afraid, tired of being this person I created to survive. Your grandmother used to say something to me at HOA meetings. She would say, "Patricia, you have built a prison and called it a palace." I did not understand then. I understand now. So withdraw the legal challenges, stop fighting. If I do that, I have nothing, no position, no power, no purpose. You have the chance to become someone new. Is that not worth something? She looked at me with desperate eyes. I do not know how to be anyone else. Neither did I. 6 months ago, I was a housewife whose identity died with her husband. Now I am an HOA president. People change when they have to. What if I cannot? Then you stay who you are, and you die alone in that prison you built. She flinched like I had slapped her. Patricia, I said more gently, I know you think you have nothing, but you have experience, knowledge, skills. You ran this HOA for 8 years. You know every policy, every procedure. You could help me, advise me, teach me. Why would you want my help? Because communities are not built by destroying the old guard. They are built by bringing everyone to the table, even the people who hurt us. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You are offering me a position? I am offering you a chance to make amends, to be part of something good instead of something destructive. Tears rolled down her face. I do not deserve your kindness. Maybe not, but I am giving it anyway, because someone gave it to me when I did not deserve it either. She pulled a tissue from her purse and wiped her eyes. What would this position entail? We would create an advisor role. Part-time, paid $2,000 a month. Same as the president's salary. You would help with transition, share institutional knowledge, attend meetings, but no decision-making power. That belongs to the community now. And in exchange, you withdraw all legal challenges. You publicly apologize to the people you hurt, and you commit to being better. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I need to think about it. Fair enough. The board meeting is in 2 hours. You have until then. I stood to leave. Patricia reached out and grabbed my hand. Diana, why are you doing this? Really? I thought about Eleanor's letter, about Grace's broken spirit, about all the women Patricia had destroyed, about mercy and justice and the thin line between them. Because hurt people, and healed people heal people. I want to see which one you choose to be. I left her there with her coffee and her choices. The board meeting started at 2 p.m. The room was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls. The 5 board members sat at the front table. Thomas was there as my legal advisor. Patricia arrived exactly on time, still in her jeans and sweater. She looked small walking to the front. The board chair, Susan Wright called the meeting to order. We are here to address the 47 legal challenges filed by Patricia Blackwood Ashford regarding the recent HOA election. Mrs. Ashford, you have the floor. Patricia stood. Her hands were shaking. She pulled a piece of paper from her purse and unfolded it, started to read, then stopped, folded it back up, looked at the room. I came here prepared to fight, to present each challenge, to drag this out for months if necessary. She paused. But I am not going to do that. Gasps from the audience. I am withdrawing all 47 challenges. The election was fair. Diana Morrison won. She is your new HOA president. The room erupted. Susan Wright banged the gavel for order. Patricia waited for silence. I am also resigning from the board effective immediately. And I would like to make a statement. She did not wait for permission. She just started talking. For 8 years, I ran this HOA like a dictatorship. I told myself I was protecting property values, maintaining standards. But the truth is, I was protecting myself from feeling weak, from feeling vulnerable, from feeling like the woman I was when my first husband left me, powerless and invisible. Her voice cracked. So I made other people powerless. I targeted widows and divorced women and anyone who reminded me of my own pain. I destroyed lives to avoid facing my own brokenness. And I am deeply, profoundly sorry. People were crying, not everyone, but many. I know sorry is not enough. I know I caused harm that cannot be undone. Families left this neighborhood because of me. People were traumatized. An 8-year-old girl got caught in the crossfire of my cruelty. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. She looked at me, but Diana Morrison offered me a chance anyway. A chance to make amends, to help instead of hurt. I am taking that chance. Not because I have earned it, but because I want to become someone who can. She sat down. The room was silent. Susan Wright cleared her throat. Is there a motion to accept Mrs. Ashford's withdrawal of legal challenges? I move to accept, said one board member. Second, said another. All in favor? 5 hands raised, unanimous. The legal challenges are dismissed. Diana Morrison is officially the HOA president of Thornton Heights. Applause, cheers, but I was watching Patricia. She sat alone at the front looking like she might fall apart. After the meeting, people crowded around me, congratulating, planning, asking questions about changes. I tried to be present, to be grateful, but my attention kept drifting to Patricia, slipping out the back door alone. That evening, Thomas and I sat in Eleanor's kitchen. Zoe was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. You did an extraordinary thing today, he said. I offered her a lifeline. She took it. That is all. Not all. You showed her mercy when everyone else wanted vengeance, including me. I'm ashamed to admit I wanted to see her suffer. She is suffering. Losing George, losing her position, her whole identity is gone. And you are helping her build a new one. We sat in comfortable silence. Then Thomas said, Diana, I have been thinking about what I said, about falling in love with you. My heart stuttered. Have you changed your mind? No, the opposite. I am more certain than ever. But I want to do this right. Slow, respectful of what we have both lost. He took my hand. Sarah was my wife for 30 years. Richard was your husband for the same. They will always be part of us. But they would want us to live, to love again, to not spend our remaining years alone. I think you are right. But Thomas, I am scared. So am I. But maybe that is okay. Maybe love is supposed to be scary. He leaned forward and kissed me. Gentle, sweet, tentative. The kiss of 2 people learning each other. 2 people scared of getting it wrong. 2 people brave enough to try anyway. When we pulled apart, he smiled. That was nice. Yes, it was. Can I take you to dinner sometime? Like a real date? I would like that. He left around 10. I sat on the porch for a while, feeling like a teenager with butterflies in my stomach. At 52, I was dating again. The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. 2 days later, I called a meeting of my core supporters. Maggie, Caroline, Grace, Helen, Susan, Jennifer. The women who had stood with me. The women Patricia had broken. We gathered in Eleanor's living room. I have made a decision about Patricia, I said, and I need to know how you feel about it. I explained the proposal. Patricia as paid advisor, part-time work, public apology required, no decision-making power. Caroline spoke first. Are you insane? She tried to destroy all of us. I know, but she lost everything. Her husband, her home, her power. She is broken, and she wants to change. Wanting is not the same as doing, Susan said quietly. Helen shook her head. She made me grieve my husband alone, harassed me while I was planning his funeral. I cannot work with her. I understand. And if you cannot forgive her, that is valid. But I am asking you to let me try a different approach. Justice without mercy is just revenge. Maggie spoke up. Eleanor would have said the same thing. She believed in second chances, even for people who did not deserve them. Grace had been silent. Now she stood up. I cannot do this. I'm sorry, Diana. I support you. But I cannot support her. What she did to me, to Tom's memory, I cannot forgive that yet. I walked over to her. Grace, you do not have to forgive her. You do not have to be part of this. Your feelings are valid and important. Then why are you doing it? Because someone has to choose healing over hurt. Someone has to break the cycle. And I would rather fail at being kind than succeed at being cruel. The room was quiet. Then Jennifer said, I am a doctor. I have seen what carrying hatred does to people. It destroys them from inside. If Diana wants to try healing, I will support that, but I will not pretend to be happy about it. One by one they spoke. Some supported me, some were angry, some were conflicted. In the end, we took a vote. 4 in favor of the proposal, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. It was enough. The community meeting was scheduled for the following week. Patricia would have to publicly apologize, specifically, by name, to each person she had wronged. It would be humiliating, painful, necessary. I met with her beforehand to prepare. We sat in my kitchen, and I walked her through what I expected. You need to say what you did. Not vague statements, specific actions. And you need to name the people you hurt. She looked terrified. In front of everyone? Yes, accountability requires witnesses. What if they do not forgive me? Then they do not forgive you. That is their right. Your job is not to earn forgiveness. It is to make amends. She practiced her apology 12 times. Each time her voice shook. Each time she started crying halfway through. But she kept trying. The night before the meeting, she called me. I do not know if I can do this. Yes, you can, because the alternative is staying who you are. And I do not think you can live with that anymore. What if I break down? What if I cannot get through it? Then you break down. Sometimes breaking is how we begin healing. The community meeting was standing room only. Every resident of Thornton Heights seemed to be there. News cameras, too. The story had gotten attention. Local woman confronts HOA tyrant. David and Goliath with a twist of redemption. I stood at the front and addressed the crowd. Thank you all for coming. Today is about accountability and healing. Patricia Blackwood has something to say. I ask that you listen with open hearts. You do not have to forgive, but please listen. Patricia walked to the podium. She gripped it like a lifeline. Her prepared notes sat in front of her, but she did not look at them. My name is Patricia Blackwood. For 8 years, I was your HOA president. I told myself I was serving the community. But the truth is, I was serving my own fear. Fear of being powerless. Fear of losing control. Fear of being the woman my first husband left behind. Her voice was shaking, but she pushed on. I hurt people. Not accidentally, not in pursuit of legitimate goals. I hurt people because they reminded me of my own pain. And I am here to name what I did and who I hurt. She looked at Grace. Grace Hartford. When your husband Tom died, I harassed you while you were grieving. I sent violation notices while you were planning his funeral. I fined you for things that did not matter. I drove you from your home. I am sorry. Grace sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Carolyn Jang. I tried to destroy your bookstore because you were divorced and rebuilding. You reminded me of myself, trying to start over. So I punished you for having the courage I lacked. I am sorry. Helen Park. Your husband died in a car accident. The day after his funeral, I fined you for his car being in the driveway. The car he died in. There are no words for how cruel that was. I am sorry. One by one, she named them. The families she had forced out, the women she had targeted, the children caught in her crossfire. With each name, her voice broke a little more. With each apology, she became more human. To Zoe Morrison, you are 8 years old. You should never have been part of this battle. I am sorry you were scared. I am sorry you got hurt. You deserved better from the adults around you. She looked out at the full room. I do not expect forgiveness. I have not earned it. But I promise you this. Every day for the rest of my life, I will work to be better, to help instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy. Diana Morrison gave me a chance I do not deserve. I intend to prove her right." She sat down and put her face in her hands and sobbed. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Helen Park stood up. She walked to the front. Patricia looked up, fear in her eyes. Helen stood there looking at her. Then slowly, she opened her arms. Patricia fell into them, crying like a child. Helen held her and cried too. One by one, others came forward. Not everyone. Grace stayed seated, a few others, but most came. Most offered hands, hugs, awkward pats on the shoulder. Forgiveness, or at least the possibility of it. I watched from the side and felt something shift in the room. The air felt lighter. The tension that had gripped Thornton Heights for 8 years was finally breaking. After the meeting, people lingered, talking, sharing stories, healing together. Patricia found me in the crowd. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is just the beginning. You still have work to do." "I know, but now I know it is possible." 6 weeks passed. Patricia settled into her role as advisor. She worked quietly, efficiently, without seeking spotlight or credit. She attended board meetings and offered insights, but never pushed. She was helpful without being controlling. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Thornton Heights changed. We reduced HOA fees to $200 a month, eliminated most aesthetic requirements, created a community garden where residents could grow whatever they wanted, started neighborhood potlucks, formed a women's support group for widows and divorcees. The Johnsons came back to visit and said they were considering moving back. The Tanaka sent a letter thanking us for the changes. Even the Washingtons, who had moved states away, called to say they were following our story and were proud. Grace slowly thawed. She and Patricia had coffee once, then twice. By the 6th week, they were meeting weekly. Grace told me, "I am not ready to forgive, but I am ready to let go of the hate." There is a difference. Thomas and I went on our first real date. Dinner at a nice restaurant. We talked about Sarah and Richard without pain for the first time. We held hands across the table. We laughed. We were two people learning to live again. On the drive home, he said, "I think Sarah would have liked you. I think Richard would have liked you too." We sat in his car outside Rosewood Manor, neither of us wanting the night to end. "Diana," he said, "I know it is soon. I know we are taking this slow. But I need you to know, you are not a replacement for Sarah. You are a new chapter, a beautiful, unexpected chapter." I kissed him, longer this time, deeper. The kiss of two people no longer afraid. When we finally pulled apart, I whispered, "Come inside." "Are you sure?" "I am 52 years old. I've been sure of very little in my life, but I am sure of this." That night, we loved each other like people who knew how precious time was, how fleeting, how worth celebrating. The next morning, over coffee in Eleanor's kitchen, I told him I was falling in love with him too. He smiled. "Took forever," he teased. "Good things take time." The following week, I got a phone call from a woman I did not know. Her name was Rebecca Stone. She lived in Beaverton, another Portland suburb. "Mrs. Morrison, I saw your story on the news about how you fought your HOA and won, about how you are creating community instead of just enforcing rules." "Thank you. That is kind of you to say." "I am calling because we need help. Our HOA president is just like yours was. Maybe worse. She is destroying families, driving people out. I have a petition started, but I do not know what to do next." I looked around Eleanor's kitchen, at Thomas making breakfast, at Zoe's drawings on the refrigerator, at Maggie's flowers in a vase on the table, at the life I had built from ruins. "Tell me everything," I said. That afternoon, I called Maggie, Caroline, Grace, Helen, Susan, Jennifer, and Patricia. We gathered in Eleanor's living room. "I have an idea," I said. "What if we helped other communities? What if we turned our experience into something bigger?" Patricia leaned forward. "Like a consulting service? For communities fighting HOA tyranny?" "More than that. A movement. A network of women who have been broken by these systems and are ready to build something better." "The Eleanor Foundation," Maggie said. "We should call it the Eleanor Foundation." We spent the afternoon planning. Patricia contributed ideas about HOA structure and weaknesses. Thomas offered to provide legal framework. Caroline volunteered to create educational materials. Grace said she would help with fundraising. By evening, we had a plan. By the end of the month, we had incorporated as a nonprofit. By the end of the quarter, we had helped 3 communities. The Eleanor Foundation was born, not from victory, but from the decision to turn pain into purpose, hurt into healing, endings into new beginnings. And in the center of it all was Rosewood Manor, Eleanor's house, my house, our house, the place where one woman's fight had sparked a movement. I stood on the porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Thomas came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. Happy? Yes, scared but happy. Good is scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that comes from building something that matters. He kissed my neck. Your grandmother would be proud. I think she already knew. I think that is why she left me the house. Not just the building, the possibility. We stood there as darkness fell over Thornton Heights. Lights came on in houses all around us, but our light felt different, warmer, more real, because it was not built on perfection. It was built on people. Broken people choosing to heal together. And that, I was learning, was the strongest foundation of all. 1 year after the election, I stood in Eleanor's art studio and looked at the painting I had started that first week. The woman in the window of Rosewood Manor, visible and real. I had finished it months ago, but I kept coming back to it, kept studying the face I had painted. My face. No longer invisible, no longer making itself small. The house around me had changed, not the structure. That remained beautifully, defiantly old, but the feeling of it. Rosewood Manor had become more than my home. It had become headquarters for the Eleanor Foundation. The dining room held filing cabinets full of case files from communities seeking help. The parlor hosted weekly meetings. Eleanor's studio was still mine for painting, but now it also served as a quiet space for women who needed refuge. I walked downstairs and found Maggie in the kitchen, making her famous scones for the afternoon meeting. She had officially become the Foundation's community outreach coordinator. Unpaid, she insisted. This was volunteer work, her purpose. How many today? I asked. 12 confirmed, 3 maybes. She wiped flour from her hands. The Beaverton group is coming to share their success story. Rebecca says they voted out their tyrant president last month. Unanimous vote for her replacement. That is wonderful. All because of you, love, you started this. We started it, all of us. Through the window, I could see the neighborhood. Thornton Heights in early autumn, the trees just beginning to turn gold and red, children playing in yards without fear of violation notices, vegetable gardens growing beside flower beds, a woman walking her dog, stopping to chat with a neighbor over a fence that no longer had to be a specific height or color. We had changed so much in 1 year. The monthly HOA fees were now $150, reduced again after we streamlined operations. We had eliminated 17 of the 23 standing committees, most of which had existed only to enforce Patricia's rules. We kept essential services, trash collection, street maintenance, communal area upkeep. Everything else was optional. Property values had increased 11%. Turned out, people wanted to live in communities where they felt welcome. Caroline's bookstore was thriving. She had expanded to include author events and a small cafe. The Book Nook had become a gathering place, the heart of Thornton Heights culture. Grace had started a grief support group that met weekly at the community center. Widows, widowers, divorced men and women, anyone dealing with loss. 15 regular attendees, with more joining each month. She had finally sold her small ranch house and bought a larger one, ready to host her grandchildren for longer visits. Helen Park had planted a memorial garden for her late husband. Residents could purchase plants in memory of their own loved ones. It had grown into something beautiful, a living monument to love that persisted beyond death. Patricia lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Thornton Heights. She had refused my offer to help her find something nicer, saying she needed to learn to live within her means. She worked 3 days a week for the Eleanor Foundation, meticulously documenting HOA bylaws, creating educational materials, training other communities. The other 2 days she worked at a women's shelter downtown, helping women rebuild after domestic violence and divorce. She attended therapy every week, went to support group meetings, even though alcohol had never been her addiction. Control had been her addiction. Fear. The meetings helped her learn to let go. Every Sunday, she had dinner with Grace. An unlikely friendship born from shared pain and the decision to heal together. Grace told me it was easier to forgive Patricia than to carry the weight of hating her. Forgiveness had made Grace lighter, freer. I had my own transformation. The blog I started, Finding Myself at 52, had grown to over 200,000 followers. Women my age from across the country sharing their stories of loss and reinvention. Publishers had reached out. 3 offers for a memoir. I had chosen the smallest publisher, the one that understood this was not about money. This was about giving voice to invisible women. The book would be out next spring, Eleanor's House, a memoir of finding home after loss. Thomas and I were engaged. He had proposed on the 6-month anniversary of our first kiss, in Eleanor's garden under the old oak tree. The ring was simple, a sapphire, Sarah's birthstone. Because he said Sarah would want to be part of this. I wore it on my right hand. My left still held Richard's wedding band. Some might call that strange. Thomas called it honest. We were planning a small ceremony for next month. Nothing elaborate, just family and the core group of women who had fought beside me. Maggie would officiate. She had gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. Ashley was flying in from Singapore next week with Zoe. They would stay for 2 weeks. Brad's assignment had been extended another year, but Ashley had decided not to go back. She had found work with a nonprofit in Portland, housing advocacy. She said watching me fight had inspired her to use her law degree for something meaningful instead of just profitable. Zoe would be starting 4th grade at the local elementary school. She was 9 now, growing taller, losing her baby face, but still sweet, still full of wonder, still my girl. The afternoon meeting began at 2. Women filled Eleanor's parlor. Some I knew well, others were new. They came from Beaverton, Lake Oswego, Tigard, suburbs all around Portland, each one representing a community fighting its own HOA battles. Rebecca Stone stood to share her story. 6 months ago, our HOA president was fining people for having the wrong color mailboxes, for parking RVs in driveways, for political signs she disagreed with. We felt powerless. What changed? Someone asked. I saw Diana on the news, heard about what she did here. I called her. She talked me through everything, how to organize, how to build coalition, how to run a campaign based on community instead of fear. Rebecca's voice broke. We won our election 3 weeks ago, by 40 votes. The new president is a retired teacher who actually cares about people. Yesterday, she eliminated mandatory landscaping requirements. Today, my neighbor planted tomatoes in her front yard. She cried while she did it because for the first time in 8 years, she did not have to be afraid. The room erupted in applause. Patricia sat in the back taking notes. She had developed a system for documenting these stories, analyzing patterns, creating strategies. Her organizational skills, once used for oppression, now served liberation. After the meeting, Patricia and I stayed behind to clean up. We worked in comfortable silence, washing teacups, putting away chairs. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. I looked at this woman who had been my enemy and was becoming something like a friend. You are doing the work. I just opened the door. She pulled an envelope from her purse. This came for you, forwarded from my old address. I think it is from George. I opened it. Inside was a check for $500,000 made out to the Eleanor Foundation. And a letter. Dear Diana, it began. I have followed your work with great interest. What you have built in Thornton Heights, what you are building beyond it, is remarkable. I am ashamed of my role in enabling Patricia's behavior for so many years. I chose comfort over courage, turned away from her cruelty because confronting it would have been difficult. This donation cannot undo that harm, but perhaps it can fund new healing. Use it however you see fit. I trust your judgment far more than I ever trusted my own. With respect and regret, George Ashford. $500,000. Patricia read over my shoulder. He is trying to buy forgiveness. Maybe. Or maybe he is just trying to do better. Is that not what we all are doing? We used the money to hire 2 full-time staff members, a legal coordinator to help communities navigate HOA law, an organizer to build networks across the state. The Eleanor Foundation was becoming real, sustainable, powerful. 3 months later, a documentary crew arrived. They were filming a piece for PBS about grassroots movements fighting institutional oppression. The producer, a woman named Rosa Martinez, spent 2 weeks in Thornton Heights interviewing everyone. She filmed me working in Eleanor's studio, painting. Filmed Thomas and me walking through the garden holding hands. Filmed the weekly women's support group. Filmed Patricia's transformation. Her work at the shelter. Her Sunday dinners with Grace. But the most powerful footage came from an unexpected source, Zoe. Rosa interviewed her in Eleanor's garden. Zoe, now 9, articulate and thoughtful beyond her years. "What did you learn from watching your grandmother fight the HOA?" Rosa asked. Zoe thought for a moment. "I learned that grown-ups get scared too. But being brave does not mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are scared. Grandma was scared every day, but she did it anyway." "Why do you think she fought so hard?" "Because she wanted me to live in a world where people are kind, where you do not have to be afraid of being different, where widows and grandmas and people who are sad can still have a home." "Out of the mouths of babes," Rosa said later, wiping tears from her eyes. The documentary aired 6 months later. Grandmothers Rising, the HOA Revolution. It won awards, sparked national conversation about HOA reform. Suddenly, we were getting calls from across the country: Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, communities everywhere fighting the same battles. We could not help them all, but we tried. We created a website with resources, how to organize, how to run campaigns, how to change bylaws. We offered virtual consultations, connected communities with each other, built a network. The movement grew beyond what I ever imagined. 2 years after the election, on a crisp October morning, I received a call from my publisher. "Your book just hit the New York Times bestseller list." I sat down hard. "What?" Number 7, nonfiction, memoir category. Eleanor's house was resonating. Women across the country were reading about my journey from invisible widow to community leader. Reading about Eleanor's courage, about the fight for Rosewood Manor, about transformation being possible at any age. I did a book tour, 20 cities in 30 days. Thomas came with me. At every event, women lined up to share their stories. So many stories of loss and reinvention, of being told they were too old, too broken, too invisible to matter. I told them what Eleanor told me: "You matter. Your voice matters. Your life is not over at 50 or 60 or 70. It is just beginning if you choose to make it so." At a reading in Phoenix, a woman in her 70s approached me. Her name was Dorothy Williams. She had started her own HOA reform group after reading my book. They had just voted out their tyrannical board. She hugged me with tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life," she said. "I was going to sell my house and move to assisted living, give up. But you showed me I could fight. I did not save your life, you did. I just reminded you that you could." The 3rd anniversary of my election fell on a beautiful spring day. We held a celebration in Thornton Heights, block party style. Streets closed off, tables set up, music, food, laughter. 300 people showed up, current residents, former residents who had moved back, neighboring communities we had helped. The documentary crew came to film a follow-up segment. Ashley was there with Zoe, now 11 years old and startlingly mature. My daughter had settled permanently in Portland, working as director of a housing justice nonprofit. She and Brad had separated amicably. He stayed in Singapore. She stayed here. Sometimes marriages end. Sometimes that is okay. She walked over to where I stood watching the festivities. "Mom, I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I was wrong about you. When you decided to fight Patricia, to keep the house, to put yourself out there, I thought you were having a breakdown. I thought you were making a mistake. You were trying to protect me. I was trying to keep you small, safe, invisible, because that is what I thought women our age were supposed to be." Our age. Ashley was 30 now, facing her own reinvention. "I am proud of you, Mom, not just for what you accomplished, for who you became. You taught me that 52 is not the end. It is not even the middle. It is whenever you decide to start living." I hugged my daughter and felt the circle of healing expand. Generational trauma breaking, generational strength building. Zoe gave a speech at the celebration. She had prepared it herself, writing it for a school project that had gone viral online, over 1 million views on YouTube. Women Who Changed My Life. She stood on a makeshift stage, reading from note cards decorated with hand-drawn flowers. 3 years ago, my grandma inherited a house, a beautiful old house that some people thought was ugly because it was different. A mean lady wanted to tear it down, but my grandma said no. People laughed gently, Zoe continued. That does not sound like a big deal, right? Saying no to one person? But my grandma taught me that saying no to bullies is always a big deal, especially when you are scared, especially when everyone else is saying yes. She looked up from her notes. My grandma is 55 now. Some people think that is old, but I think she is just getting started. She is teaching other grandmas to say no to bullies. She is making the world better for people like me. And when I grow up, I want to be just like her. The crowd gave her a standing ovation. I stood there crying, so proud I could barely breathe. That evening, Thomas and I prepared for our wedding. Small ceremony, as planned, 40 people in Eleanor's garden, the oak tree strung with lights, chairs arranged in a circle. Maggie in her best dress, ready to officiate. Ashley walked me down the aisle, not gave me away. I was not property to be transferred. She walked beside me, supported me, as I had supported her. Thomas stood under the oak tree, tears already streaming down his face. He wore a simple suit. In his pocket, I knew. He carried a photo of Sarah. She was here with us. Richard was here too. The people we had loved and lost, they were part of this, part of us. Maggie's ceremony was brief and beautiful. She spoke of love as a choice, love as courage. Love as the decision to be vulnerable again after loss has taught you how much vulnerability costs. Then it was time for vows. Thomas went first. Diana, when Sarah died, I thought my life was over. I thought I would spend my remaining years alone, going through motions, waiting to join her. Then you moved in across the street with your wild garden, and your fierce heart, and your refusal to disappear. You reminded me that life is for living, that love is worth risking, that second chances are real. He pulled out a small box. Inside were 2 rings, Sarah's wedding band and a new one. I will always love Sarah. You will always love Richard. But we can also love each other. These rings honor both truths. He slipped the new ring on my finger, the old one on his own. My turn. I had prepared words, but standing there looking at this man who had seen me at my worst and loved me anyway, the prepared words felt wrong, so I spoke from my heart. Thomas, you saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You taught me that grief and joy can coexist, that ending one chapter does not mean there are no more chapters to write. I love you, not despite our losses, but including them. Our scars are part of who we are, and I love all of who you are. I slipped a ring on his finger. He kissed me. Our families cheered. The reception was simple. Food and wine and dancing under the stars. Zoe and Sophie, now 12 and best friends, had made decorations. Patricia gave a toast that made everyone cry. 3 years ago, I was Diana's enemy. I tried to destroy her. She responded by saving me. Not from consequences, from myself. She showed me that becoming better is always possible if you are brave enough to try. Diana, Thomas, may your marriage be blessed with the same courage and grace you have shown this community. Grace gave the second toast. She raised her glass to Tom's memory, then to new beginnings, then to the women who refused to be invisible. We danced until midnight. Thomas and I slow danced to a song Sarah had loved, honoring her memory even as we created new ones. Ashley danced with Zoe. Maggie danced with Caroline. Patricia danced alone for a while. Then Grace pulled her onto the floor and they danced together. 2 women who had been enemies becoming something like sisters. As the party wound down, I found myself in Eleanor's studio. Thomas found me there, looking at her unfinished self-portrait. You know what I think, he said. I think she left it unfinished on purpose. A reminder that we are always becoming, never finished. That is beautiful. You are beautiful. We made love that night as husband and wife, slow and tender and full of gratitude for second chances. 5 years after I moved to Thornton Heights, I stood in front of 200 women at the 5th annual Eleanor Foundation gathering. The event had outgrown Rosewood Manor. We held it at the Portland Convention Center. Women from 47 states, representing over 300 communities that had successfully reformed their HOAs. The Eleanor Foundation had grown beyond anything I imagined. We had helped change laws in 15 states, trained over 500 women for community leadership, created a national network of advocates fighting for inclusive, compassionate communities. I stood at the podium and looked out at all those faces, young and old, every race, every background, united by the belief that communities should be built on kindness, not fear. 5 years ago, I was a widow living in a tiny apartment, staring at an eviction notice, thinking my life was over. I was 52 years old and invisible. I paused. Then my grandmother left me a house. A beautiful, imperfect, defiant old house that did not fit anyone's idea of perfect. And someone tried to take it from me, tried to make me give up, tried to make me disappear. I looked at Patricia in the front row. She smiled through tears. But I had something she did not expect. I had nothing left to lose. And I had a letter from my grandmother telling me to fight. So I fought, not just for the house, for the right to be visible, to be heard, to matter. The room was silent. One woman fighting one bully is a story. 200 women fighting 200 bullies is a movement. And that is what we have built. Not because I am special, because we all decided that being invisible was no longer acceptable. I gestured to the women on stage with me. Patricia, who was our enemy and became our teacher. Grace, who lost everything and found herself. Caroline, Maggie, Helen, Susan, Jennifer. Women who were told they were too old, too broken, too weak to matter. Women who proved everyone wrong. Applause building. This movement started because a 90-year-old woman refused to give up her house, because she painted herself into existence, even as dementia tried to erase her, because she believed her invisible granddaughter could become visible. I held up the worn letter. Eleanor wrote me before she died. She said some battles choose us. This battle chose all of us, and we chose to fight together. Standing ovation. Women crying, hugging, celebrating. The tradition had begun at our first gathering and continued every year. Each woman planted a flower seed in a communal garden, spoke one word, their intention for the year. One by one, 200 women planted seeds and spoke their truth. Courage, freedom, voice, beginning, hope, strength, healing, justice, community, love. Patricia planted her seed and said, forgiveness. Grace planted hers and said, peace. When it was my turn, I planted Eleanor's favorite wildflower seeds, the ones Zoe had found that first week. I spoke my word, gratitude. That evening, back at Rosewood Manor, the core group gathered for dinner. Thomas and me, Patricia and Grace, Maggie and Caroline, Ashley and Zoe, Dr. Jennifer Walsh and her new partner, a kind woman named Ruth. We sat around Eleanor's dining table, eating and laughing and telling stories. 3 generations, multiple loves, loss and healing intertwined. Zoe, now 13 and full of teenage wisdom, asked a question that silenced the table. Grandma Diana, if you could go back and tell yourself something 5 years ago, when you first got Grandma Eleanor's letter, what would you say? I thought about that woman, 52 years old, grieving, invisible, terrified, holding an eviction notice and a letter from a grandmother she barely knew. I would tell her that the fight will be worth it, that she is stronger than she knows, that she will lose some things and gain others, that at 57, she will be happier than she ever was at 27, that the best parts of her life have not happened yet. Zoe smiled. That is what I thought you would say. After dinner, Thomas and I walked through the garden. The wildflowers Eleanor had planted decades ago were blooming. The ones Zoe had planted 5 years ago had spread. New flowers mixed with old. Generations of blooming, intertwined. We sat on the bench under the oak tree. Above us, the stars were coming out. Regrets? Thomas asked. Only that Eleanor is not here to see this. She is here. In the house, the garden, the foundation, in you. He was right. Eleanor was everywhere. In the paintings on the walls, the creaking floorboards, the wild beauty of Rosewood Manor refusing to be tamed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Morrison, my name is Claire Johnson. I live in Tampa, Florida. Our HOA president is destroying our community. I saw your documentary. Read your book. Can you help us? I showed the text to Thomas. It starts again. Does it ever stop? I hope not. We sat there as darkness fell over Thornton Heights. Lights came on in houses all around us, each light representing a family, a story, a person who no longer had to be invisible. The Eleanor Foundation would help Claire Johnson. and the next person, and the next, because the work was never finished, would never be finished. There would always be communities needing healing, women needing to find their voices, houses worth fighting for. But tonight, I was not thinking about the next fight. I was thinking about how far we had come, how a crumbling Victorian house had become a symbol of resistance, how an invisible widow had become a voice for thousands. I leaned against Thomas and felt his arm around me, steady, strong, here. 5 years ago, I thought my life was ending. I was wrong. It was transforming. At 57, I was more myself than I had ever been. I had a husband who saw me, a daughter who respected me, a granddaughter who wanted to be like me, a house that was home, a purpose that mattered. And every day, more women were finding their voices. More communities were choosing kindness over fear. More invisible people were becoming visible. It started with one letter, one house, one woman deciding to fight. But it became something bigger, something beautiful, something that would outlive us all. I looked up at Rosewood Manor, lights glowing in the windows. Eleanor's portrait hung in the studio, seeming to smile in the darkness. "Thank you," I whispered to her ghost. "Thank you for the house, for the letter, for believing I could be more than I was." Thomas kissed my temple. "Ready to go in?" "Not yet, just a few more minutes." We sat there under the stars, two people who had been broken finding wholeness together. The house stood behind us, solid and beautiful and defiant. The garden bloomed around us, wild and free. And somewhere across the country, a woman was reading my book, finding courage, planning her own fight. The movement would continue, the houses would be saved, the voices would be heard. Because Eleanor had planted a seed 5 years ago when she wrote that letter. And now it was blooming across the nation. We had built something that mattered, not perfect, not finished, but real. Communities where people belonged, where kindness won, where women over 50 were not invisible, where houses like Rosewood Manor, beautiful and old and different, were protected instead of destroyed, where every person, no matter their age or loss or circumstance, had the right to be seen. I stood up and took Thomas's hand. Time to go inside. We walked toward the house together. Behind us, the garden. Before us, home. Around us, a community we had helped heal. And above us, stars that had witnessed generations of women fighting to be visible. Eleanor's fight, my fight, Zoe's fight someday. The fight that never ends but gets easier when we do it together. I turned at the door and looked back one last time. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, beautiful in its imperfection. Thornton Heights had become what I always believed it could be. Not a showplace, a home. And Rosewood Manor stood at its heart. Eleanor's house, my house, our house. The place where one woman's refusal to disappear had sparked a revolution. Where invisible women had become unstoppable. Where we had learned the most important lesson of all, that blooming is possible at any age, for any person, in any circumstance. All you need is the courage to plant yourself somewhere and refuse to be uprooted. All you need is the strength to say no when the world wants you to say yes. All you need is the belief that you matter, that your voice matters, that your life is not over. It is just beginning. I walked into the house and closed the door behind us, but the light stayed on in Eleanor's studio, a beacon for anyone who needed to know that second chances were real. That transformation was possible, that invisible women could change the world. One house, one fight, one refusal to disappear, at a time.